I witnessed one of those scenes that many consider one of the most beautiful on Earth. Despite the circumstances, seeing the sunrise in Hawaii is a dream for many people. However, as it was, it only made me feel more anxious and aware of how alone I was. I always dreamed about this, but I never imagined that I would do it alone. Now I understand what people mean when they say that success doesn't matter if you don't have someone to share it with. And I think it's worth adding that the person with whom you share success should also matter to you, and vice versa. I didn't come to Hawaii alone, but after yesterday I began to realize that you can be in a small group of people, or even in a large crowd, and still be lonely. My concern stems from the fact that there is a lot at stake on this trip, and it appears that both my boss and I underestimated not only the stakes, but also the possibility of not getting what we came for. Our jobs, maybe our careers, are on the line, and I feel like the sword of Damocles is hanging over our heads. At the same time, I learned yesterday that what I thought no one knew had already become known to the worst person in the world who could know it. So this morning, I got up early to see the sunrise. I don't know when or even if I'll have another chance at something like this. A tear rolls down my cheek because as I watch the subtle hues of light, as the ball of light rises above the horizon, bringing with it the hopes of a new day, I feel nothing but sadness, bitterness, regret, and anger. It shouldn't be this way. I can't blame anyone for my situation but myself, so I think I should get my act together and try to make the best of this relatively crappy situation. My name is Alvina Caldwell, and this trip was supposed to be a way for my boss, Lou Grant, and I to impress the new top management at our company. Our company, Dalton Industries, was recently sold to a group of younger investors, and they seemed determined to bring in their people. All the new employees they brought in seemed younger and bored. I don't consider myself an old maid at 38 years old. My boss, Lou, is 12 years older. He's 50. When we first saw them at a staff meeting, Lou, I, and the rest of our team thought the same thing. We all decided that we were going to have to babysit a bunch of kids. We thought that these children might be the children of some shareholders. Perhaps their parents didn't know what to do with them, or sent them here to give them a taste of the real world. We thought that we would teach them everything, mentor young upstarts, and pass on to them the fruits of our many years of experience. Already in the first week, we realized that we had problems. Even though many of these kids were barely out of college, and some were still in school, it turned out that we had to strain to keep up with them. To say that the culture in our workplace has changed overnight is an understatement. Men wearing suits and ties at work disappeared, as did business suits and semi-formal clothing for women. Jeans, miniskirts, and tracksuits have become the norm. One of the first things I noticed was that each of these children, as we called them, was wired. Everyone had a laptop, tablet, or smartphone, and they all stayed connected constantly through all forms of communication that I had never heard of. In many cases, they communicated much faster and more seamlessly than our corporate network allowed. It was very scary, and almost nothing was written down on paper. They sent almost all documents to a server that I didn't even know existed. When I mentioned this in a meeting, I was told that the new communication structure had been outlined on the staff page of the new corporate website. My boss should have given me the login and instructions weeks ago. Neither Lou nor I even knew that a corporate website existed. Those with whom we worked for many years did not know about this. After a few weeks, we began to notice that many of our former colleagues were no longer with the company. Out of curiosity, I called a few of them, thinking that perhaps they had quit or found better jobs. I was surprised to learn that they were all fired. Everyone said the same thing. They simply couldn't adapt to the new corporate model. Most of them told me that maybe they could figure it out with time, but things are moving too fast right now. And most of them didn't even know what Twitter was, let alone have an account. Lou was the last of the dinosaurs. I couldn't count because I was his assistant. Whatever happened to Lou happened to me by default. The new owners seemed to like us for some reason, but they constantly criticized everything we did. They also made it harder and harder for us to keep our jobs. Since they took over the company a year ago, neither of us have received a pay raise. Finally, they found something we could help with. More and more businesses have begun to spend a significant portion of their advertising budget on online marketing. One of the leaders in the field of online advertising has begun accepting new clients again. Well, when marketing came out of nowhere about 4 years ago, they had many patented processes that revolutionized online marketing. Their advertisements, both on the internet and on television, were discussed by everyone. Early commercials had a guy who sounded like the duck from the Aflac commercial asking questions to the viewer. "You said you were going to start advertising your business online," he asked. "So," he shouts. Then there is a voiceover that talks about when marketing. They gained clients so quickly that they were forced to stop accepting new accounts for the last 3 months of last year. They simply didn't have enough staff to service all the customers. I would give anything to know about their corporate structure because literally overnight, the company went from nothing to being valued in the billions of dollars. Anyway, they're having a new account fair tomorrow, and they'll start accepting new clients again, and this is where Lou and I screwed up. You see, Lou and I thought we'd just show up and sign with them. We have not prepared any presentation. We didn't even think we'd need it. Even on the plane, we realized our mistake. We met a couple of representatives from other companies who were discussing how the business model had changed. In the past, advertising agencies would come to clients and pitch their ideas for advertisements that would sell the client's products. Now that internet marketing had taken off like a rocket, and the few companies that had access to more screens had as many customers as they could serve, they could afford to choose. Lou and I didn't realize this when we boarded the plane. Lou was so busy talking about old times that we didn't even realize the rules of the game had changed. We both thought they would try to please us. I was here not only because I'm an almost 40-year-old sweetie, but also because I'm half of Lou's brain. I have always been considered very attractive. I'm average height, about 5'6". I have long blonde hair and very blue eyes. I have a round butt and very shapely legs, but it's my breasts that attract men like a magnet. I'm a size 42DD, which looks even bigger on my ordinary physique. There are very few men who can take their eyes off her. This is both my greatest advantage and curse. From an early age, I learned that I could get almost anything I wanted from a man just by breathing heavily and smiling. Unfortunately, I also got a lot of things I didn't want. I think Lou decided that my presence on this trip could be his ace in the hole if he needed to sweeten the deal. This is one of the problems I encountered this morning. My moral standards began to shake. I suddenly realized that my presence here in the role of someone other than Lou's assistant made me some kind of virtual woman of easy virtue. My real value on this trip is to wear a low-cut blouse and bend over often. I guess I have accepted that in a world where technology and paradigms are changing and evolving faster than I can comprehend, I will have to use every advantage I have to keep my job. The fact that men would be looking at me no longer even registered on my moral scale. What confused her was the idea that I might be forced to sleep with one of them. I've never done this before, not even once. I can still be proud that I have never slept with a client for either business or personal reasons. But this trip could turn me from a virtual woman of easy virtue into a real one. This is a decision that may have to be made much sooner than I was ready for. I don't think I can do this under any circumstances. Sex causes too many problems. Trust me, I know. If the choice was between sleeping with someone and losing my job, I would probably choose to stay unemployed. While thinking about this question and the circumstances, my thoughts began to wander. There were so many differences between the way business was done now and the way things were done 18 years ago, when I graduated from college with a bright and fresh associate's degree in business and office practice. Today, everything revolves around computers and the internet. Almost everything can be done in-house, including most meetings. I couldn't believe it when I saw a team of kids having a virtual meeting with a design team based in Japan. It was like a corporate version of Skype that translated the speaker's words into English on our side and Japanese on theirs. I didn't even know where to start to set up something like this, but the children mastered such things as if they were born with a computer in their hands. The more I think about the kids and how they are better with technology than with people, the more I realized that my husband would do just fine in our current environment. In fact, he would have succeeded. It was his playground, not mine. As I sat there and watched the sun fill the area with a warm glow, I suddenly realized that maybe our jobs weren't as precarious as I thought. Perhaps the children's strength was also their weakness. Most of them were good with technology, but not so good with people. Most of them had difficulty working without their tech toys. It scared me terribly to see them sitting in groups at the dining room tables. 3 or 4 of them sat together at lunch and didn't even look up from their screens to talk to each other. Did they just text hi or bye to each other instead of saying it out loud? This inability to connect with and date real people was the only advantage Lou and I had. Now I realized that this was probably the only reason the two of us hadn't been fired yet. I wonder what will happen to us if we screw up this task. I think we would have done better if we gave a great presentation and didn't get the deal with Wellwyn than if we came back and said we didn't get it because we were not only unprepared, but also didn't know the rules of the game. Will they look for new dinosaurs if Lou and I failed to complete the task? I tried to distract myself from thoughts about work, watching the zeal of young and not so young surfers on the waves. As usual, I compared every man, whether he was thin or fat, short or tall, with my ideal man. It's funny, but my ideal was not at all what people would expect it to be. Because of my physical attributes, I could choose any man I wanted, and when I was younger, I did. I was a very late bloomer and didn't receive the gifts of my genes until my freshman year of college. My mom always told me that when they showed up, I would have to fight off the guys. By them, she meant breasts. Most of the women in my family are very well built, some even to ridiculous proportions. I didn't want them. I've seen the damage they can cause. My mother married my father because she loved him with all her heart. She had no illusions like some women. She just wasn't insightful enough to understand that all the factors in an equation do not always remain the same. Some women marry a man knowing he has flaws because they think they can change him. Women always believe that they can transform a man into their ideal vision of what he should be because they have what God has given them to control men. Men are no less stupid either because they have their own version of it. Men don't marry women they consider imperfect. Men go after women until they find the one that suits them. But then they expect her to stay that way forever. Gravity, time, and the aging process, both physical and mental, prevent this. My mother, being the wise woman she was, knew that my father had a problem. He had his own addiction. No, he was not an alcoholic or addicted to illegal substances. He did not have a gambling problem and was not violent. My father was obsessed with breasts. He loved my mother, but he worshipped her breasts. My mother could control my father simply by how many buttons she undid on her blouse. She could make my dad agree to anything just by bending over. By the time I was old enough to understand what she was doing, I loved watching it. She'd say, "Honey, can you mow the lawn today instead of tomorrow? I want to invite a few people over, and it would be nice to do it outside." He replied, "But I was going to play golf today. I always mow the lawn on Sunday." She undid the button and his eyes went to her cleavage. Then she smiled, and some unspoken message passed between them. 5 minutes later, I heard the sound of a lawnmower. My mom just laughed. When I grew up, I asked her about it. "But Mom, can't he see and have your breasts whenever he wants?" I asked. "Of course he sees," she laughed. "Actually, they belong to him. I just carry them with me. My breasts are just one of your father's triggers. Once they come out into the world, no matter what happens, we end up in love. And they come out quite often because I love being with your father as much as he loves being with me. I just have to pretend that it's just his desire to keep the upper hand." At the time, it seemed to me that it was a very difficult relationship, but I have to admit that it worked for them. There was no happier couple in our area. All the women were jealous of my mother, and all the men were jealous of my father, and the two of them loved each other madly until it all ended in my first year of college. My 5 freshmen were actually more like 20 freshmen. My skinny legs became more rounded and dense. My butt also became more rounded. But the biggest change was that within a year my breasts got bigger so quickly that they hurt. I went down a smaller C that barely showed up on anyone's radar before the double D. When I returned home, all my clothes, especially my underwear, no longer fit. I also came home to help my mother cope with the pain of being diagnosed with breast cancer, as well as her treatment and recovery. Over the years, my mother continued to love my father more and more, but a few months after the surgery, it became clear that what he loved most was gone. A year after my mother's surgery, he left my mother a note, the contents of which she never revealed to me. He split everything with her 50-50, except that she had to keep the house. My father was, and probably still is, a good provider. She also receives half of his pension until she dies. And he paid for me to finish college. My mom told me that he only divorced her so she could find someone else. Someone who will love her the way she deserves, instead of loving her for who she used to be. In his own way, I think he was honest, and although I never sought it out, I always respected him for it. Instead of dragging out the situation and tormenting her, he decided to give my mother one sharp blow and waited until she had fully recovered from cancer to do so. No one can ever say or control how one person treats another. When I think about this, it makes me laugh. I probably spend a quarter of my salary on private detectives, but I've never tried to find my father. Either way, my father's passing affected my mother. It changed her, aged her, and ultimately killed her much faster than cancer could, and in a more insidious way. As I mentioned earlier, my mother loved my father with every fiber of her being. I think it must be genetic, too. She just couldn't come to terms with the fact that he left her. Overnight, she began to look much older than her actual age. She also lost much of her confidence in her own image. She spent a lot of time looking at pictures of herself from when she had breasts. She dated several times and several guys really liked her. But her heart never beat for anyone the way it did for my father. Seeing this made me realize that all the guys I dated weren't right for me. I'm sure I would have eventually come to the same realization myself, but seeing my family fall apart made me even more aware of the fact that finding the right man is important. Most of the guys I dated were athletes or outgoing people. They were the kind of guys who were competitors and were willing to do whatever it took to get what they wanted. In many cases, they wanted to have my breasts and have sex with me. In the end, it was normal, and I got a lot of benefit from it in a purely physical sense. But after a while, I began to wonder if there was something more. I didn't feel the way my mother felt about my father, about any of these guys. In fact, sometimes I've broken up with guys just because they made me angry or made the wrong joke. There were always way more guys who wanted me than I needed. Things were going great until my third year of college. I put off all my math classes until this year because I hated math. Even with interest calculations and compound interest formulas in accounting class, I was ready to pull my hair out. I was assigned a tutor. Danny Caldwell was the kind of guy I used to look past to see my date. Someone like Danny would never have been on my radar at all, and when I first met him, it wasn't love at first sight. The first thing I noticed about it was that my grades improved. I didn't think then that if you asked me to describe him, I could do it, even though I spent 3 or 4 hours a week with him. Gradually, some of the things he said began to dawn on me, and they were not related to mathematics. Most of the guys I dated couldn't wait to get me naked. In fact, the guys who were the most confident didn't even bother dating before sex. They just showed up to have sex with me. I began to remember how patient Danny was with me and how he always made time to see me. I think it was my birthday that made Danny go from faceless idiot to date material. The guy I was dating was supposed to be a great wrestler. Everyone thought that he would go to the Olympics, and then, damn, what do wrestlers do after the Olympics? Anyway, Stu, the wrestler, came to my birthday party. I expected that we would go to a show or a good movie, but everything was as usual. Less than 30 seconds after he got to my dorm, we were having sex. During this, he shouted, "Happy birthday." Just when I thought things had gotten as bad as they could get, he pulled out his cell phone and took a couple of photos of me. "Why the hell did you do that?" I hissed. "Did you like it? Wait, I'll show these photos to the guys." He buttoned up his pants and got ready to leave. "What about my damn birthday?" I asked. "I gave you a gift," he grinned. "What are you whining about?" "God." I wanted to cry. After Stu left, I took a shower and cleaned myself up. I had just gotten out of the shower and put on my robe when the doorbell rang. I walked to the door, still drying my hair. It was Danny. "Sorry, Danny," I said. "I didn't know we had a session today." "We don't do that," he said. "Happy birthday." He handed me a small box and left. I opened the box, and inside was a beautiful gold medallion. It was real gold, too, not one of those cheap fakes. I opened the locket, and there was nothing in it. The rest of the evening, I thought about this medallion. My roommate even commented on it when she got home from her date. "I'll give you my gold earrings for this," she said. "I don't think so," I told her. "Why did he give this to you?" she asked. "Today is my birthday, remember," I said. "Damn, I forgot," she said. Then it dawned on me. I was a hot, beautiful, and popular woman, but none of the guys I dated even bothered to remember my birthday. My roommate, who was supposedly my best friend on campus, didn't take the time to give me a gift. Only Danny remembered. I started thinking about him then. I began to remember how he always looked into my eyes when he spoke to me. He was always patient with me when it came to teaching me new things, or even explaining for the 20th time something I had already forgotten. I began to wonder what he would be like in other aspects of life. I even started to imagine the long term. I was sure that he would be perfect for me. Like my mother before me, I realized that Danny's flaws could be useful to me. Yes, he was socially awkward and not particularly attractive. But after college, no one would pay attention to his appearance, which meant that he was much less susceptible to the temptation to cheat. And since he wasn't mesmerized by my breasts like all the other guys, maybe he'll actually get to know me and love me for who I am, and not just my appearance. The next day when we met for class, before he even got his books out, I started asking him questions. "Danny, what is this for?" I asked. "I bought this for your birthday," he replied. Then he looked into my eyes and his face changed. "Sorry," he said. "That's my fault. I've been studying with you for several months now and didn't want to break any boundaries. I think I started to think of us as friends and not just as tutor and student. This won't happen again." He looked really sad. He had done the only thing that prevented me from considering my birthday a reason to die, and now he was apologizing for it. "Danny, this is a wonderful gift," I smiled. He was very attentive. "I just wanted to understand why you did it, and we really are friends. I will never take it off." I was wearing a deep V-neck sweater, and a small medallion hung between my breasts. He looked at me and smiled, and this smile was not sexy or vulgar. He was just glad that I liked it. "What should I do with him?" I asked. "I have no idea," he replied. "Maybe you could put a little picture of you and Stu in there." I was simply amazed that someone just wanted to make me happy. I didn't do much math that day, but Danny was patient as always. I spent the whole day staring at him. He was short, but not so small that it was unpleasant. If he started working out, he might have a decent body. He wasn't outright ugly, but his features were hidden under a mass of long, curly hair and huge glasses. I told him that I had been distracted all day by a large stain of dirt on his glasses. I took them off under the pretext that I wanted to clean them. I was struck by the biggest, softest, most innocent brown eyes I had ever seen. The best thing about it was that once his glasses were off, I could look at him and analyze him as much as I wanted, because his eyesight was so bad that without them he could barely see me, let alone understand me, that I appreciate him. I decided right then and there that he was the one. I'm done with what I call dating. But I was stupid, and even though Danny couldn't see, I was the one who was blind. As my mother told me, since I got breasts, I've gotten used to everything going my way. It was something like the golden rule, but with breasts instead of gold. Those who had golden breasts set the rules. It worked for me until I met Danny. All these hormonal football players and other guys did everything I wanted for the opportunity to get the golden breasts. But Danny wasn't paying attention. If I came out of the shower without a bra under my shirt or robe, he would still be concentrating on math, but he would tell me how great my hair smelled. One day, I even pretended that I forgot to put on my underwear, and he noticed it. He even told me this to avoid my embarrassment. I don't think it ever occurred to him that I was trying to seduce him. It took me 2 weeks, which was a lot longer than I've ever tried to get any guy to do anything for me. It took these 2 weeks only for me to realize that not only did Danny not realize that I was interested in him, but that he already had a girlfriend. I smiled when I discovered this. I saw this as a kind of competition that I would undoubtedly win. It took me 2 days to find out who his girlfriend was. I laughed until I cried. The girl was so ordinary that I couldn't understand what she could give him that I couldn't. I also couldn't understand why he didn't leave her immediately when I started hinting that I was interested in him. No one else I knew would have thought twice. I think that's what made him so damn special and made me want him even more. He was a man who kept his commitments and stood by his girlfriend no matter what. Luckily for me, his girlfriend didn't have the same moral principles. If she had been more faithful, nothing would have worked out. We did what in team sports they call a tripartite deal. I asked one of the guys on the football team to date me in exchange for a date with Danny's girlfriend. I also hinted at what he might get if he ruined their relationship. Without going into too much detail, I'll just say that less than an hour after I made my call, my idiot football player started hitting on Danny's girlfriend. She was in his bed in less than 90 minutes and ended her relationship with Danny in less than 2 hours. Did I do my best Hannibal Smith imitation and say, "I love it when a plan works"? Surprisingly, no. I expected Danny to immediately rush into my arms, but that didn't happen. I haven't seen or heard from him for over a week, and even then I had to look for him. I was so used to the fact that after breaking up with a guy or him breaking up with me, he would immediately start seeing someone else that same evening that the pain I caused Danny shocked me. I asked a few of his friends where he was and found out that he hadn't even attended class all week. They directed me to his dorm, and the Danny I found was not what I expected. Danny was never what I expected. I don't know why it took me so damn long to realize this. Danny was depressed and badly beaten. He was also drunk, although Danny didn't drink at all. Danny called his girlfriend to ask her what he did wrong so he could get them back. She told him she just found someone better. Danny kept trying to win her back, and she was starting to realize that my football player was just using her. Danny wrote her poems and did many other nice things to try to win her back. This little guy did everything so well that she began to hesitate. My football player couldn't compete with Danny's romantic advances, so he resorted to what he knew best. He publicly beat Danny. However, the football player himself came out worse because he weighed 100 pounds more and was 6 inches taller than Danny. But Danny didn't give up. Ralph almost gave up and didn't tell Danny why he did it. The entire crowd ended up turning on Ralph, and he didn't have as much fighting spirit as Danny. He escaped. Perhaps the hardest blow for Danny was the realization that the feelings he had for the girl did not matter to her. She just threw him away for a chance to be with a guy who didn't care about her. She later tried to win Danny back, but he wanted nothing to do with her. In fact, most of the students on campus, like the Amish, turned their backs on her. Even after she was out of the picture, it took Danny and I a long time to be together. First, he had to get over breaking up with her. It didn't matter that she left and transferred to another college. She was still calling him, trying to get him to talk to her. Once he got over that, he decided he just didn't want to have a woman. When I asked him why, he told me the saddest thing I've ever heard. He said that women are like cars. Sometimes it is better to rent them than to own them. If I lease a car, he said, as long as I make my lease payments on time, maintaining the car is the rental company's responsibility. When I'm done with the car, I get a new one, brand new. I can get a new car every 2 years. If I buy a car long before it's paid off, I'll have to start paying for repairs, he continued. And at the end of the day, No matter how much I love this car, if I can't drive it, it's no use to me. Lease is better. We still pay, but paying up front is less painful. Then you know what you're getting and not getting a kick in the teeth. We're not talking about cars now, are we? I asked. So, Danny, how exactly would you rent a woman? They are called prostitutes or escorts, he said. Danny, why would you pay for something I'll give you for free? I asked. He laughed. When he saw that I wasn't laughing, he simply changed tactics. Alvina, I can't do this, he said. So I'm just ugly, huh? I asked. I just couldn't understand him. Alvina, you are probably the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, he said. When he said this, I almost attacked him. I'm not much shorter than Danny, and I'm pretty strong for a girl. I truly believed that I could throw him on the bed and just take it. But it just won't work, he continued. The whole point of renting or hiring is that there are no emotional attachments, so no one gets hurt, and you are my friend. There can be no meaningless sexual relationship between us because I care about you, and that will mean something, and someone, probably me, will get hurt, and I'm just not strong enough to go through that again. We continued to communicate, supposedly supporting each other and helping him get over the breakup. We got closer and closer until we were together. Believe me, it was not as easy as it seems. I've always had enough attention from guys, and some of them can't take no for an answer. And I'm not a saint. I made mistakes a couple of times because I'm a normal, healthy woman who loves sex, and Danny and I weren't in a serious relationship yet. But from the moment our relationship became serious, I didn't do it anymore. On the other hand, Danny was not second class either. The news of the fight and what Danny was willing to do for his ex spread throughout campus, and many girls wanted to be with him. Surprisingly, I was first in line, but he didn't see it. I almost lost him, so I had to take matters into my own hands. Although we no longer took math classes together, Danny and I saw each other often. Damn it, we saw each other so often that we could live together. He was all excited about his upcoming date with some stupid student English, and I couldn't stand her at first sight. She was one of those bohemian girls who was a little on the wave, and I was sure that they would have a lot in common, so I had to play my trump card so as not to lose it. He came to me for advice about a date, and I smiled at him. I showed him the medallion he gave me and asked him to put it on me. Danny, you know I've never taken this locket off since you gave it to me except in the shower, right? I said. He simply smiled. I opened the locket and showed him pictures of the two of us inside. He was really surprised. I couldn't believe that he didn't even know how I felt about him. So I have some advice for you about your date tomorrow, I said. It's not like I've never gone on a date before, Alvina, he said. I smiled and pulled him by the hand, sitting him down on the sofa. I hugged his hand and didn't let go. I always did this, but somehow it registered with him only as friendship. Well, I want you to be prepared, I said. So let's start with the basics. How can you tell if a girl likes you? You just feel it, he replied. Maybe, but there are more obvious signs, I said. If she smiles often when you're with her and takes every opportunity to touch you, you probably like her. But these are just signs that she likes you. Maybe it's just a friendship. I know you're probably also wondering if she's sexually aroused by you enough for the friendship to develop into something more. Worst for it can be very frustrating for a guy to be in the friend zone. He looked at me strangely, and I realized that I succeeded. Do you know how to understand this without wasting weeks or months waiting? I asked. How? He asked. I flexed my finger and motioned for him to lean closer. We sat next to each other on the sofa, and our legs touched each other, so that we physically could not be closer if he had not laid down on top of me. I have one last piece of advice for you about your date tomorrow, Danny, I said. After we're done, I said, I think you should call that bitch and cancel your date, because if you ever go on a date with anyone other than me again, I'll hurt her, okay? That's it. This was my chance to seduce the man I loved. I've been working on this for months. With most of the men I knew, I could just say, let's have sex, and it would happen. But with Danny, it took months. My intention was to make sure that what Danny and I had developed into the love I had wanted my whole life. I needed him to love me the way he loved his ex, only more. I was just going to drive Danny crazy with passion. I was going to wear him out so much that he would never be the same. I was in full combat mode. I was a little worried that Danny might pass out, or I'd have to chase after him and pounce on him. The vision of me running down the hallway, completely naked, with my breasts flying, and jumping on him in front of witnesses flashed through my head, and I smiled. Fuck them all. I didn't care what a bunch of students thought. It was for everything in the world. It was for the sake of a happy life and future. But again, everything didn't go as I expected. Yes, I had experience, but as it turns out, I never really learned. Looking back, I realized that all of my publicized experiences came from men who were completely selfish, and all they did was use me. Danny truly loved me. When I woke up, it was already dark outside, and we were still in bed. I pulled the blanket over us and apparently made more noise than I thought because my neighbor looked into the room. "Damn, you had a good time," she said. "They were standing outside the door listening to you when I returned home." "Who's there with you?" "My husband," I answered. She closed the door, still laughing. "Danny and I got married right after graduation. Both landed great jobs for a couple fresh out of college and began their journey through life hand in hand. Now it seems so distant." I smiled, remembering this. I was so carried away by memories that I forgot my own rule. I never allowed myself to think about the past because it always hurt me. If I don't stop, I'll start crying and then get depressed. I focused on what was right in front of me. I concentrated on the waves and focused on the surfers. One guy came out of the water as if he was heading straight towards me. He rode his board all the way to the beach, and when the water got too shallow, he just picked it up and walked ashore. He picked up the board, and something seemed strange to me. When the sun was almost fully up, he put on the sunglasses hanging around his neck. He was not large, but muscular. He was wearing long board shorts and came out of the water and turned before reaching me. His hair was cut so short that I thought I could smell his brain, but it was a good decision for him. He was so tanned by the sun that I almost thought he was Hawaiian. He walked up to the guy who rented out surfboards and stuck his board into the sand. He handed him a towel, a shirt, and a pair of boat shoes. When he got dressed, the guy threw him a soda, and he left. For some reason, I couldn't take my eyes off him. I expected him to come up to me to try to talk. Although he was clearly younger than me, few men could resist my girls. However, he did it. He didn't even look at me twice. He walked towards the car, which I didn't notice. It was a beast. The car was a Mustang. I knew this for sure because they are everywhere now. My husband had one too, but not quite like this one. He was much older. This one was one of the new ones. It also came with a custom paint job. The bright orange color started off into a tribal motif towards the back featuring a volcano and pineapples. I don't know anything about car mechanics because I'm not a car guy, but Danny would know. I'm sure he and this guy could sit and talk about Mustangs for hours. The most interesting thing was that I was just told yesterday that maybe it was time to move on with my life. I wonder what my husband would think of who I have become. Would he still love me? My biggest problem was that after losing him, the love I felt for him simply refused to fade. But now it was getting harder and harder to remember what he looked like. It seemed like a crime to forget the face of the person you vowed to spend eternity with. I couldn't believe that after just 5 years I could barely remember his face. Come on. I couldn't believe that after 5 damn years I still remembered her face. She was standing on the beach like some kind of big-breasted fertility goddess when I emerged from the waves. Out of habit, I put on my glasses. I was sure that they would be a sufficient disguise, although Grace always said that no one from the past would recognize me. My height has remained the same, it cannot be changed. But other than that, I have changed completely. Over the past 4 years, after almost 10 months of hunger, I gained about 30 pounds of muscle mass. I cut my hair because Grace wanted it, but now that I'm used to it, I have to admit that it's much easier this way. Of course, all that weight, although mostly muscle mass, also slightly changed the contours of my face. I swapped my glasses for contact lenses, and the sun is all here bronzes. My mother didn't recognize me the first time she finally came to visit me last year. It was funny, but still shocking that my own mother was standing next to me and didn't recognize me. On the other hand, I recognized Alvina at first sight. It is impossible to forget her. You could write songs about her breasts. They seem to have settled a little lower on her chest, but that's probably just gravity doing its thing. Maybe there were a few new wrinkles on her face, and her expression wasn't as hopeful and happy, but I knew it was her. Most of the guys on the beach couldn't take their eyes off her breasts. If they knew what she was like, they would forget about decency and pounce on her just to touch her. They say that Helen of Troy had the face that launched 1,000 ships. Alvina's breasts could launch 2,000. Hopefully, whoever owns her now is prepared for all the attention she gets. Even as I dried myself, I felt a flash of pain at the thought. I thought that all this was already behind me. There was a thought in the back of my mind that she should still be mine. These breasts and the rest of her body were to be mine for the rest of my life. But this, like everything that came out of her mouth, was a lie. Alvina must be around 38 years old. I just turned 36. We were together for 13 damn years, and I only really got to know her after I left her. I was a fool, and she pulled my strings almost from the very beginning. I smile, remembering how skillfully she played me, almost as if I were a $2 violin, and she was a violin virtuoso. No, I take that back. I was a Stratocaster, and that bitch was Jimi Hendrix. She played me, forcing sounds out of me that seemed impossible. Her entire audience was enjoying the music, and then she threw me on the damn stage and set me on fire. I think she believed that after her performance, she would never play me again, and after the flame, no one else could. Was I bitter? Hell yes. Was I angry? Maybe. Am I jealous of someone who is having sex now? I want to say no, but I'm not sure I can. Did I miss her? The hell with it. Probably psychologists would say that I need to close gestalt or some other nonsense that makes no sense in the real world. But I don't need it. What I really need is to get this bitch and her problems off my island. To be honest, most of my anger was related to my building materials. For the last 4 or 5 years, Alvina had lived in a wooden box in the farthest corners of my mind. She was there with my 3rd-grade English teacher who tried to force me to learn how to use commas, and that guy who took my lunch money in elementary school. Now I have people I pay to write reports, and if that bully came along now and wanted money, I would show him where he belongs. I became a different person, not only externally, but somehow Alvina managed to get out of that damn box, and that scares me. All I have to do is wait until she finishes her vacation or whatever she's doing, and I'll build her a new crate. This time I will make it out of concrete and steel. I got into my Mustang and drove off without looking back. Okay, I lied. I did take one look in the rearview mirror and saw her still standing there, looking at me as I drove away. I wonder if she experiences the same sense of déjà vu that I do. This time it's different because this time I'm not crying. I drove along the coastal road to my building, and within 20 minutes my attention was divided. One part of my mind was watching the road, while the other was rewinding time to the events that happened before we parted ways for the last time. I think it was the worst 2 weeks of my life. Alvina and I were married for about 12 years. We settled in and felt comfortable. We had a good house, savings, friends, everything we needed. She started dropping hints about having children, or so she claimed. I really think she was saying this because her mom was passing away, and maybe she thought having grandchildren would help her. Or if not that, maybe she just wanted her mom to see her grandkids before she left. I don't know, but I know we never had children. Anyway, my old company deceived me. After over 10 years in business, they decided I was getting too expensive. I only found out about this after I was fired. It was as if they forced me to dig my own grave. They made me spend 2 weeks training my own replacement. I had trained people before who then worked with me or did similar work in other departments, so I didn't think twice about it. This time, the person I had to train was a woman, or rather, a girl. I've never seen anything like it. I didn't realize it at the time, but it was like I was looking at diamonds in the rough. Before they are cut and cut, rough diamonds sometimes look like regular stones. And that's exactly what she looked like, just an awkward, clumsy girl trying to get used to her body. She was sweet in her own way. She was very exotic, with her jet black hair and gray eyes. Her cinnamon-colored skin made her look unreal. Her eyes were almond-shaped, so I knew she was half Asian. After a few conversations to pass the time, I found out that she was half Asian and half Brazilian. She seemed to have the best features of both races. For 2 weeks, she followed me like a puppy. She was a very fast learner, and after the first week, she no longer needed my help. But for some reason, she kept following me. She kept asking me questions, and I noticed her looking at the large framed photograph of Alvina on my desk. I was sure that some of the guys at work who were already trying to get her into bed had mentioned seeing Alvina with me at some company events. I was sure she was talking to someone when she started covering her upper body more and wearing shorter skirts. At the time, I thought it was cute but pointless. I loved Alvina so much that I simply could not believe that anyone else could take her place. The next thing I remember, or at least the next thing that stands out most in my memory, is the day I got fired. I remember Grace burst into tears, and the people I had worked with for over a decade just stood there in shocked silence. They didn't even throw me a going-away party, so a few guys from work, and of course Grace, took me to lunch. I had no idea how to tell Vin about this. It wasn't that bad, I could have found another job, but it was a shock. I called her to tell her the bad news. Alvina made most of the decisions in our marriage. We discussed things, but if we couldn't agree, she would just show me her big breasts, and everything would happen according to her will. For some reason, I never told her that what I loved most was her eyes, not her breasts. But she was proud of her breasts, and I loved her, so I allowed her to live in this illusion. After all, I had my own illusion. I came to her house every day. There was no reason on paper why a nerd like me would have a woman like her. I thanked my lucky stars every day that she loved me as much as I loved her. I called her cell phone, and it went straight to voicemail. I knew that Alvina would be free soon, so I decided to stop by her office. When I got there, it was a little later than I expected. Most of the cars have already left the parking lot. Some of Alvina's colleagues even waved to me as they left. They were good people. We invited some of them to a barbecue. I was sure they were just as surprised by our relationship as I was. I arrived at the door just as one of the last people left. I walked through the dark corridors to her office. Only a thin strip of light made its way through the slightly open door. "Wait a minute," she said. "I need to call Danny and tell him I'll be late again." I thought I'd just open the door and tell her what I already knew. I even reached out and placed her hand on the door until I noticed that her blouse was completely unbuttoned and her bra was pulled down. Her boss, Lou, stood behind her with his pants pulled down to his ankles. "Stop it, Lou," she said. I barely managed to turn off the ringer on my phone. She left me a message that she would be late and that she loved me. What ironic coincidence is this? "You're lucky I let you call him at all," he said. "Damn, you're lucky that I haven't forbidden you to sleep with him yet." "He doesn't deserve you at all," he said. "You are mine." "Stop it, Lou. If you leave marks on me, we'll be in trouble," she said. "Damn, you already have problems," he snapped. "Has your little idiot already found out he's being fired?" "Not yet," she replied. "At least he hasn't told me yet." "When will you leave this loser?" he asked. "As soon as you leave Mary, we can be together," she answered calmly. I think I probably should have burst in there and beat them both up, or at least died trying. But I was shocked. If I thought losing my first girlfriend in college was hard, it almost killed me. The first time I went through this in college was nothing compared to this. I was only with Belinda for about 8 months. Vina and I were married for 12 years. The funny thing is that it took me the first 5 years of our marriage to get over the idea that she might leave me. What was even funnier was that it was Alvina who helped me forget Belinda. This time, I'll have to pull myself out of it. I think deep down I always knew something like this would happen. I fought for Belinda and got it all. I've already heard Alvina call me a loser and say that as soon as Lou leaves his wife, they will be together, so what's the point? The best solution for all concerned would be to simply disappear. I quietly walked out of the building and got into my old Mustang. I drove home as fast as I could and packed everything I had. Then I set up the stereo and wrote a note. The strangest thing about it was that in more than 12 years of marriage, I never lacked words for Alvina. We often talked for hours. But at this most important moment of our time together, I couldn't think of a single word for her. I limited myself to just press play. Then I got into the car and began to wait. As soon as I arrived at the right place, I took out my phone. I dialed the office number and tried my best not to let my voice waver. Ironically, Alvina answered the phone. "Lou Granta, please," I said quickly. More out of habit than for any other reason, Alvina simply handed the phone to him. "Hi, this is Lou," he said. "Hey Lou, it's a loser," I said, and he took a deep breath. I think he was in shock. "What are you talking about, buddy?" he asked. "We're almost done. The baby will soon be home, safe and sound, in a couple more minutes." I heard a click and was sure he was on speakerphone. "There's no need for her to rush home. By the time she returns, I will be gone. I was there earlier and saw you too. I heard what you were saying about me. I think what hurt me the most was that Alvina agreed with you." "No, Danny, you don't understand," she screamed. "I'll be leaving in a few minutes, so she won't be burdened with me anymore. I loved her with all my heart. I'm sorry this wasn't enough. I'm not going to tell your wife about this. In exchange for keeping your secret, I only want one thing. Just be nice to her, Lou. Tell her she can keep everything. I only take a little money. Let her decide for herself how she wants to get a divorce." When I hung up, I was sure Lou was alone because I couldn't hear Alvin in the background. She must have broken every traffic rule in the city because she made the 10-minute drive from her office to her home in 6 minutes. She drove onto the lawn and ran out of the car, completely naked. She opened the door and entered the house. I heard her loud cry, which turned into a desperate howl. A few moments later, I heard the music start playing and Tina Turner's voice began to penetrate the walls. I thought about the sound I heard from the open door of the house. It was the sound of a tortured soul, or maybe just a very good actress. Lights came on the porches of neighboring houses. I started the engine, and the exhaust system I loved so much gave me away. My MagnaFlow exhaust system produced a deep, rhythmic sound that was easy to identify and hard to miss. A second after I started the car, a light came on the dashboard, indicating that the trunk was not fully closed. With all the stuff I could carry in the trunk and back seat, I had to get out to close it. It took me less than 4 seconds to reach the trunk and another second to close it. In those 5 seconds, she ran out of the house wearing one of my jackets, throwing it over her naked body. Hearing her bare feet on the grass and then on the asphalt, I was stunned for a second. Why was she so tormented over a loser? She could have just let me go. "Danny," she screamed. She must have put all her strength into that scream. It started out loud and demanding, but ended with a sad sob. It's amazing how she could pack so much emotion into one short, 2-syllable name. I waved to her when she was almost there, and then got back into the car. As soon as she got close, I drove away. She started running faster. But 2 legs against 4 wheels is not even a competition. My last memory of Alvin was what I saw in my rear mirror. This image is imprinted in my brain. All her blonde hair was disheveled around that angelic face, giving her the appearance of having just been torn from bed. Those huge breasts, barely contained by my jacket, heaved with every breath she took. The jacket covered almost nothing. When she turned around, her bare back could be seen. She didn't even try to cover herself. Why does she need this? Alvina has always been some kind of Amazonian goddess. She was living, breathing art. Like Stu before me, I realized that no mortal could possess a goddess forever. My time is simply up. My turn is over. I turned my back on everything I knew then. I left Michigan never to return. I left all my friends. I had a lot of them. But what did that mean? None of them could help me. Of course, some of them could help me find another job or offer me a sofa or even a guest room to stay in for a while. But no one, not even your best friend, could help in a situation where you are experiencing such devastation. What can even your best friend do when your heart has basically been ripped out? I have a friend who is a doctor. He told me many times how many preparatory stages are necessary for even a minor heart operation and how dangerous it is. Doctors, even the most talented of them, cannot cope alone. Repairing even a minor valve requires a team, including an anesthesiologist, a surgical assistant, a nurse, and several other people in addition to the doctor. Sometimes there are 6 or 7 people on a team, and they all play a vital role. Even with the most minor heart surgery, if any member of the team fails to do their job or makes a mistake, tragedy can occur. These medical professionals earn hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and they deserve it. Alvina, on the other hand, makes $35,000 a year, and she has just done everything these people do, all by herself. She just stuck her hand into my chest, pulled out my damn heart, which was still beating, and defecated on it. Of course, unlike the medical team, Alvina didn't need the patient to live. As I said, my friend couldn't help here. After the operation that Alvina so skillfully performed on me, I was nothing more than a zombie. I wandered around, obviously alive, but silent, only eating, sleeping, and driving. I withdrew half the money from our checking account and half our savings. Vina could have kept the rest, but I needed money to live, and this was my rightful money. I was more than generous. I didn't slow down or stop until I was exhausted. I needed to put as much distance between us as possible. 2 days passed before I even thought about my phone. I realized that I left more than just Alvin in Michigan. There were other people who might even deserve to know that I was okay. One of the biggest disadvantages of smartphones, especially iPhones, is that they require a lot of power. My phone was dead as a disco. I reached into the center console for the cable and began charging it. I continued driving for another hour and decided to stop for something to eat. I pulled into the McDonald's parking lot. As I was leaving the parking lot, I saw a girl trying to hitch a ride. She constantly looked around. I think she was checking to see if there were any police nearby. I stopped and opened the door. She got into the car. The whole damn car smelled like McDonald's. She didn't even look at the food. Not noticing this was my first mistake. I looked at her. She looked normal. She had long legs, but she was nowhere near Vina's level. Damn, who was it? She unbuttoned her jacket, and I saw small breasts, but a very flat stomach. Alvina had a small, round belly that she hated. She did thousands of crunches and sit-ups over and over again, but it never went away. I found him sexy. Our children will grow up here, I said. At that moment, sitting in my car and looking at the dirty t-shirt with the image of Hawaii on the hitchhiker's chest, I wondered if Alvina was faking that expression too. Most of all, I thought about why she put up with me for so long. "Hey, wake up, guy," she said. "Have you never seen breasts before?" I almost died laughing. 1,000 things came to mind at that moment. "I've never seen such little ones," was one of them, but I didn't say anything other than sorry. "If you want to take a closer look, or maybe something more, we could stop and make a deal," she suggested. "No, thanks," I replied. "It's a pity," she said. "It could have been better." "Better than what?" I asked. "Better than me having to rob you to get the money I need," she said. Her voice and demeanor changed dramatically. I don't know where she got it from, but suddenly I was looking at the barrel of a very business-like gun. "Stop the car," she ordered. "No," I said calmly. "I'll just keep driving." I pressed the gas and drove into the middle lane of the highway. "What the hell are you doing?" she asked. "I told you to stop the car." "I heard you," I replied. "I'm just not going to do it." She raised the gun higher and pointed it at the side of my head, and I leaned closer to her. I approached her so close that the barrel touched the skin on the side of my face near the temple. "Come on," I shouted to her. "Shoot! Shoot now!" She moved the gun away. "Are you crazy or something, mister?" she asked. No, I'm completely normal, I said. I just don't want to live anymore. The pain is too much, and I want to see what happens next. What really happens after death? I don't know what will happen, but it has to be better than walking around with this empty feeling and hole in the heart where your wife should be. Slow down, mister, she said nervously. It's not that bad. You can get back together if you stay alive. The speedometer was rapidly approaching 100 miles per hour, and she was clearly nervous. We can't fucking get back together, I hissed. Drops of saliva flew from my mouth as I whispered each word while looking into her eyes. Mister, please go back to the road, she pleaded. For what? I asked. I don't want to die, she replied. I want to, I said. Put that fucking gun back to my head right now, or I'll kill us both. Mister, you can bring her back, she said. If you love her that much, you just have to fight for her. If she sees you fighting for her, she'll know you love her and everything will get better. It'll even heal the hole in your heart. She doesn't come near that hole anymore, I said calmly. This hole was intended for the woman who loved me and not for some big-breasted woman of easy virtue. Why are you guys so damn obsessed with women with big breasts? She asked just as the horn of a truck on the other side of the road began to blare. I crossed the median and she screamed. I turned the steering wheel sharply to the right and we almost hit the truck. Please, mister, she begged. Look, if you want to die, that's your business. But let me go out. Roll down the window, I shouted as the car began to swerve to the left again and cars around me started honking. She didn't hesitate. Throw the gun out the window, I said. She did and again did not hesitate. I turned the steering wheel sharply to the right and began to slow down. I pulled over to the side of the road and told her to get out. I'm really sorry, mister, she said. I just needed the money so badly. So you didn't see that huge employees wanted sign at McDonald's where I picked you up? I asked. I don't want to work in fast food, she replied. There is no future in this. But there's a real thing to it, I snapped. So get on with it while you work on something better. Do you really want to die? She asked. I just nodded in response and left. The last thing she muttered as she closed the door was, "Love is for idiots." I don't think she realized that I heard her, but her words influenced me. She was right. Every time I gave my heart, all I got in return was a kick in the teeth. I looked at my phone screen as I got back on the highway. I had over 50 messages, and most of them were from Alvin's. I turned off my phone and went back to my zombie ride. But that girl's words stuck in my head, and I had a moment of clarity. I decided right then and there that I would get up and just start my life over. But this time I will be better. This time I won't let myself be distracted. And this time I will do everything myself. I'll never fall in love again. Elvina, I'll never fall in love again. This is exactly the thought that flashed through my head as I collected my things and walked back along the beach to my hotel. I tried to erase the image of the guy in that Mustang from my memory, but he stubbornly did not disappear. There was something primal about him. As I walked past a guy who rented out surfboards, I reached out to touch the board he had just returned. A hand as strong as iron grabbed my wrist before I could touch it. "You are a very beautiful lady," he said. "But this board is not mine. Its owner keeps it with me. He comes here to ride every morning." I should have noticed this earlier. The board matched the car. The coloring was almost the same. There was even a large icon of a running Mustang pony in the center of the board. "Have a nice day," he said. I turned back towards the hotel. I didn't want to go back there, but I had to. Apparently, what I was going to do did not meet my expectations. Last night, I slept in a comfortable, although not luxurious, hotel. I slept alone. I guess I expected someone else to be in bed. But everything went wrong. I wonder what made Mary, Lou Grant's wife, come with us on this trip. Mary had nothing to do with our business. In fact, she was almost my exact opposite. Mary had dark brown hair and a slight build, but she had a grip like an iron claw on Lou's heart. On all the occasions when I met her, I never saw anything special about her, just a little gray mouse. I ignored her for years, just like I ignored Danny. Yesterday on the plane, Lou moved back a few rows to stretch out and take a nap. Mary moved and sat next to me. Well, that's joy, I thought. Now the conversation will begin about female power and shopping. For the first few minutes, she didn't say a word. Just watched as I looked at the report from my private investigator that I had just paid another $400 for. It's been 5 years, Alvina, she said. He either died or moved on. Anyway, for your peace of mind, don't you think it's time to move on? I looked at her as if I was seeing her for the first time. There was a steely tone to her voice that I had never heard from any woman. No, I answered sharply. I can't. I will never give it up. No one can hide forever. Even Bin Laden was eventually found. I love Danny, and we will get through this and continue to live together. Alvina, you are a beautiful woman. You could have another man with just a snap of your fingers, she said calmly. I don't need another man, I hissed. I had many men before Danny, but I love him. He does things to me that no one else can do. I love him the way my mother loved my father. She died of loneliness after he left her. Years passed before she simply died. But that won't happen to me because I will find Danny. He is the only man I will ever love. In polite society, such a statement usually ends the conversation. Maybe she would have responded with something like, I hope you find him, or a little more sarcastically, good luck to you. But Mary Richards Grant went further and rose from barely noticeable being to the top of my list of bitches with her next question. If he is the only one for you, and you love him so much, why are you sleeping with my husband? She asked calmly. All the alarm bells in my head went off as she turned to face me. Her eyes carefully followed my every movement, recording every little detail on my face as I gasped for air, stunned. Relax, she said. You have at least 2 more years, maybe even 6. My question was more out of curiosity than anything else. What do you mean 2 years? Or, I asked. Before I divorce Lou, she said. Of course, if you don't handle this matter and he gets fired after this trip, I'll have to do it now. That's why I'm here. You know how it is in business. This is what you studied in college, right? When serious problems arise in a company, the chairman and CEO steps in to sort out the situation. And that's exactly what I do. She smiled at me. I have to protect my share of the assets. I need to make sure my children are provided for and taken care of no matter what happens. You don't know what it is, she chuckled. It still amazes me. Such big breasts and all for nothing. Heck, you could have fat, happy babies. In any case, if you and Lou mess this up, I'll file for divorce immediately. Lou is already 50 years old. He will be 51 next week and is in very poor health. Having sex with you is the only physical activity he gets. I swallowed loudly. His skills, like yours, are out of step with the times. The chances of him getting another job at his current level and with the same pay aren't very good, so maybe it's time to let him go. The divorce papers have been ready for more than 6 years. The only thing left is to fill in the numbers and update the evidence. But I don't. I began. You had sex with Lou for 6 years, she finished. She said, you weren't the first either. You started about 3 days before your husband caught you, and I even know why you did it. You are smart enough for a stupid woman, and you seem to really love your husband. If your plan had worked, you would probably be happy now, and I would be in the same situation, only it would be some other girl that Lou would cheat with. But if you knew all this all along, why? I started again. Why didn't I say anything? She asked. It's complicated. You know Lou loves me, right? She asked, and I nodded. He loves our children just as much. The problem is that he and I are not the same as you and your husband were. Our sex life has never been good. This is probably due to some physical problem in me. But I never enjoyed sex. Never. Maybe it's the way Lou does it. But he, on the other hand, has a very high sexual appetite, and he is, how can I put it, like a bull in a china shop. I put up with it and gave birth to his 2 children, but after that our relationship just dwindled to once, maybe twice a month, and on his birthday. That's all I can bear. It's very frustrating for him because he really loves me, but I don't give him what he needs. This makes him cheat on me, and it slowly burns away all the feelings I have for him. I made him fire his 2 previous mistresses because the situation was getting out of control. I will not tolerate disrespect, and I will not tolerate things becoming anything but secretive. You never said anything disrespectful about me, but some of the things he made you say about your husband were quite cruel. You do understand that you hurt him more with your words than with your sex, right? But all this was not true. Lou makes me say these things because I already know, honey, because he's insecure, because he doesn't give you as much pleasure as your husband, or did. Lou really boosts his ego when you tell him he's better, that your husband is a loser, and that you'll leave him for Lou. And he, like almost every other fool, is blinded by your breasts. But how do you know all this? I asked. From the moment I found out about Lou's first mistress, long before you became his assistant, I wiretapped his office. There were cameras and microphones installed everywhere. I have access to his phone and yours. All this was done before you became his assistant. I even have recordings of your cell phone conversations. I know we're not friends and never will be, but can you take a little constructive criticism? I have no choice, right? I asked. She smiled and looked at me. You always had a choice, she said. You always had them. Look, most of us are colored by some traumatic experience from our childhood or youth. In your case, it was the moment your father left, when your mother lost her breast due to surgery. Your mother died unhappy because she really loved your father, and you decided that this would never happen to you. As you told your college friend last year, you started by flirting with guys because you didn't want to fall so deeply in love that it would ruin you when they dumped you. My eyes widened in surprise that she was able to analyze me only from telephone conversations with other people. It was truly self-destructive behavior, dear. But it seems you got over it. What amazed me was her reaction when you told her how upset you were that your husband left you. When she asked why you cared, you got really angry at her. I guess she's one of those women who looks more like a cartoon character than a real person. In her mind, we can all only fall in love with a 6-foot blonde Adonis. Listening to you talk about him, I understood why he attracted you. It's not a physical attraction, although you are just going crazy with the way he has sex with you. Danny didn't just have sex with a lot of people, I interrupted her. Yes, I know, she intervened again. He made love to you. Blah, blah, blah. He took you to places no one else even went near. I've heard you tell this to more people than Ford sells cars. It doesn't matter, honey. You fell in love with him because he was the only guy who could see the woman behind your breasts. He loved Elvina, not Elvina's breasts. This guy would drive through hell on a tanker with his clothes on fire for you. You knew that even if you became like your mother and lost your sweaters, he would still love you, and you too would still be happy, right? I started crying and nodded my head. And somewhere in this little fairy tale, everything became much more serious, didn't it? She asked. You responded to how much he loved you. It became some kind of strange, vicious circle. The more he loved you, the more you loved him. When I heard you tell Lou about how you wanted to strangle the women he worked with, I knew what would happen next. I understood how you meant it, and I saw how Lou took it. It's too late, honey, but you know Lou lied to you, right? What do you mean? I asked. And if you know all this and love Lou or loved him, why are you allowing this to continue? Why didn't you do anything? I already told you, she replied. You didn't let the situation get out of control, and it's in my best interest to let you continue. I need you. I already told you that I just don't find sex enjoyable. Those few times a month when I have to put up with him to keep Lou happy are torture for me. He's using you like a rented horse. He doesn't even know that you don't like it. We know why you did it in the beginning, but now you're doing it so he can keep helping you pay the detectives, right? I saw the bills, and you would never have been able to pay them without his help. What do you mean he lied to me? I asked. I became more and more upset. Before she could answer, Lou appeared and sat down next to her. Because of his size, he needed a middle chair, so she had to move back to the aisle seat. Since then, I've been wondering what she meant by his lies. Even when we had dinner last night, We didn't have another chance to talk alone. I was angry and upset, but at least I didn't have to sleep with him last night. I got into the elevator and went up to our floor to get ready for the conference. I took a slow shower and washed my hair. For some reason, I moved as if in slow motion. If I don't hurry, I won't have time to look through the documents about Wellwen that are lying on the table. I decided to save time and not style my hair. I simply blow-dried it, applied some styling gel, and then pulled all my hair into one long, loose ponytail. I applied makeup and looked in the mirror. I remembered why I didn't do my hair that way anymore. Danny loved it when I looked like this. I was glad that he couldn't see the wrinkles that had appeared in the corners of my eyes in just 4 years. I didn't know if those wrinkles came from all the tears I'd shed, or from how much I'd aged and how much less energy I had. My life was no longer a life. I didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything. I had very few friends left because I just didn't want to communicate with anyone. It was strange. At the beginning of our relationship, Danny was socially awkward. I took him to parties and made him step away from the wall and talk to people. He never became the life of the party, but at least he learned to carry on a conversation if necessary. This has never been difficult for me. Because of my appearance or the way I looked before, I didn't have to think about what to say or when to say it. Attractive women don't have to worry about anything. Attractive women with large breasts have even less. I could go to a party and almost immediately there would be people to talk to. Danny was much more difficult. Now it seems that everything has changed. For a long time, being next to me, he gained confidence and tried things that he would not have dared to do before. But I didn't want to do anything else without him. I get mammograms twice a year, and there have been no signs of cancer yet, but it scares me. If Danny and I were still together, I would still get tests, but it wouldn't be such a big factor. I know that if I don't have a child soon, the chances of this may disappear. At 38, if I don't do this in the next 2 or 3 years, there won't be any point. I guess I could just find some random guy or go to a donor bank, but I want my kids to be Danny's. I know it sounds stupid, but he and I aren't done yet. I did terrible things to him, but in every case, every bad, shitty decision I made, it was out of love for him. One of the reasons I've fallen so madly in love with Danny over the years is his gentle nature. Danny would never, ever hurt me. Well, he did it once, but it was my fault, and he hurt me by leaving. I still remember running through the building, naked, with only my car keys in my hand. My chest was swinging in all directions, and several truck drivers almost drove into walls or other cars while looking at me. I didn't care. My only thought was to get home to Danny before he ended our relationship. I ran up the stairs and into the house, screaming his name. There was no note. He just disappeared. Everything became a blur, and I almost fell, but I managed to grab onto the dining table. Then I found this, a sheet of paper folded very tightly. I wondered why it was rolled up so tightly, and I saw it again burst into tears. It was curled up so tightly because Danny's wedding ring was holding it in place. I unfolded the note, expecting to see a long, sorrowful statement about why he no longer loved me and how bad I was. I knew we would have several phone conversations and arguments. But what he didn't know was that there wouldn't be any damn arguments because I would win every fight or disagreement we ever had. Of course, I only won because he loved me so much that he was ready to do anything for me. I made all the decisions in our relationship, but mostly because nothing seemed important to him while we were together. But this time, everything would be different. There won't be any dispute. I'll just tell him what I had to do and why, and then I'll throw myself at his mercy and do whatever it takes to keep us together. I'll quit my job or kill Lou or do anything. No matter how crazy his request is, I'll do it so we can stay together. At first, I thought the paper was empty. Then I saw 2 small words in the middle of the page. Press play, it read. So I did. Once in your life, you find someone to show you the way, Tina Turner sang in her signature deep voice. Someone who will make decisions for you, and I let you lead me in the wrong direction. I lost control of myself after that line because that one sentence showed me that Danny thought I had deceived him or deliberately hurt him, which was so far from the truth. I started crying then. I started crying. He didn't understand anything. Pain shot through me as if someone had just taken a red-hot poker from the fireplace and stabbed it into my stomach. I curled up into a ball on the floor. I hated that damn song with a passion I didn't even know I had. "When the pain goes away, I won't miss you," sang Tina, that bitch. I knew that from Danny's point of view, this was his way of telling me that he would get through this, and when it was over, I would no longer be a part of his life or heart. "I won't look over my shoulder, because I know I can live without you." And that hurt me the most because I knew deep in my heart that he really could. Even though I seemed to be the leader in our relationship, Danny was the strong one. And his strength did not lie in that ostentatious masculinity that many men need. It wasn't arm strength. It was the strength of character and conviction. That was one of the things that attracted me to him. He didn't have to prove his strength by trying to dominate me or telling me what to do. He didn't need to hurt me to prove his strength. All he ever did was love me. Even before we started having sex, I remember wondering when he would make the first move towards me, but he never did. When I brought up the topic, I remember how much I wanted him that I almost cried. When he said, "We'll never have meaningless sex because I care about you and it will always mean something to me," I was his from that moment on. From that moment, I knew we were destined to be together, and I would do anything to protect that. Before this, I just wanted him. When he gave me the locket, I wanted it. Damn it, I used people and broke up his relationship with that Belinda girl just to speed up the process. But from the moment he said those words, Danny and I became a runaway train. Nothing could stop us on our way to each other. And even now, when 5 years, 1 week, 3 days, and 6 hours have passed, we will still be together, even if it means I move my rocking chair next to his in the nursing home. A knock on the door pulled me out of my thoughts. "Elvina, it's time for us to go out," Lou said through the door. I opened the door, and he entered my room. Even with my back turned, I could feel him looking at my ass. My skirt ended 4 inches below my knees. I pulled a small waist-length jacket from the closet and put it on over my blouse, and he frowned. I quickly undid 3 buttons, and the smile that appeared on his face quickly disappeared. I put on my locket, like I had done every day since Danny gave it to me, and fastened the buttons again. Then I took the bracelet from the dresser and put it on my wrist. A man's wedding ring hung from the bracelet, making Lou's smile even shorter. I wear this ring every day. As we walked down the hallway toward the elevator, Lou touched me lightly. "I really missed you last night," he said. I ignored it. "Elvina, when will you stop yearning for this loser?" he asked with a smile. I knew this was one of his games to make him feel more confident before the meeting, but the last 24 hours had been hell for me, and I was not in the mood. Before I knew what I was doing, I bared my teeth like a wolf and growled. "Never." The elevator opened and interrupted his answer. We went down to the first floor and caught a taxi to the building where the conference was being held. Wellwyn's headquarters was almost as big as a hotel. The taxi driver told me that the building was originally planned as a small casino. It has 5 floors of office space. On the ground floor, there are 2 restaurants and about 15 shops. The second floor is rented to several companies. The next 3 floors are completely occupied by Wellwyn. The top floor and even the roof, where the large garden and swimming pool are located, are intended for private living. Lou and I were amazed at how many people were circulating through the building. When we reached the 3rd floor, there was absolute chaos. Lou and I looked at each other and realized that this event was much larger than we thought. A sea of people buzzing and fussing, holding laptops and other devices, was amazing. We had nothing to show for it. What were we going to do? Just walk in and say, "We're Lou and Elvina. We're from Dalton, Inc. We don't have much to show, but can you admire Elvina's breasts a little bit or ride them?" It would be a complete failure. Before we even get back to our office in Michigan and even sit down, we will be fired. If I get fired, how will I pay for detectives to find Danny? I started humming that damn song again. It was weird. Danny intended this song to make me feel like shit, but it didn't turn out that way. I changed its meaning to my own and made it a source of strength. In my version, when the pain goes away meant when Danny and I would be together again. I won't miss you meant he would come back to me where he belonged. What the hell are you humming? Lou asked next to me. Suddenly, the people around us parted, as if Moses were walking across the sea. I craned my neck and saw a tall Asian woman striding through the crowd towards the podium on the other side of the room. The woman was at least 5 feet 10 inches tall, and in her 4-inch heels, she easily towered over 6 feet. She radiated confidence from every pore. I didn't often feel intimidated by other women, but this time I did. The sheath dress she wore must have cost at least a couple $1,000s. Her shoes probably cost more than my car. I had a curvier figure, but her ass, legs, and waist made me look tired and old. For the first time, I was glad I wasn't standing next to her. There was something familiar about her image. She stepped up to the podium and began speaking into a wireless headset. "Hi," she said, smiling widely. "I'm Grace Van." Before she could finish, there were shouts of, "Hi, Grace," as if she were a rock star. "Where's Cal?" someone else shouted. "Who the hell is Cal?" asked Lou. The guy next to us, without taking his eyes off my chest, told Lou that Cal was the CEO and majority shareholder of Wellwen. Grace was the director of operations. Cal allegedly developed Wellwen's proprietary software shortly after moving to Hawaii. Cal and Grace shared a tiny apartment, surrounded by computers and eating pineapple and tuna while they established the company. Over the next 3.5 years, Wellwen virtually cornered the online marketing market in North America, Europe, and parts of Asia. If you saw an ad on a tablet, smartphone, or computer screen, or a streaming ad on a gaming console, there was a 67% chance that the ad was from Wellwen or streamed through their platform. "Damn it," Lou said. "I didn't even know it was so big." "Welcome to Wellwen," she continued. "Since there are so many of you here, we will divide you into 2 groups. Please, let's maintain order and calm. Believe me, we will see each of you over the next few days. It won't be like last year where we actually exceeded our capacity. We have hired many additional account managers and now have access to significantly more screens around the world. We are also moving into South America and the African continent. This means your products will be visible in more places than ever before." There was another big round of applause, and if I hadn't known this was all about business, I would have sworn some of these people were drunk. "I love you, Grace," someone shouted from the back rows. She just rolled her eyes and smiled. "Okay, here's how we organize it. We, she began to stutter, which was completely out of character for her, and looked at something. I looked at Lou, who stood frozen with his mouth open, and looked around until I realized that she was looking at me. When she saw me, she began to stutter. She continued again, but I noticed that although her performance was again impeccable, her mind was not there. She spoke as if on autopilot, thinking about how to find a way out of the situation that was troubling her. "Maybe my breasts distracted her," I whispered to Lou. "It's not about them," he replied, "and in general, no one sees them in this monastic outfit that you put on." I wondered what was the matter. "I wonder how she ended up here," he said. "Do you know her?" I asked. "Not as good as you, fool," he said. "I've never seen this woman in my life," I answered. "Elvina, get your head out of your ass," he said. "It could save our asses and our damn jobs. Why don't you do what you do for 18 hours every damn day? Maybe the problem is that you don't get enough sleep." "What the hell are you talking about, Lou?" I asked. "You sleep a little over 5 hours a night," he said. "The other 15 minutes we have sex. And that's your whole day." "What about the others?" I began. "You spend the other 18 damn hours daydreaming, reminiscing, and thinking about your worthless loser husband," he blurted out. "Now, if you think about him, looking at her, everything will become very clear who she is." I looked at her carefully, and even from the podium I saw that she was also looking at me. "It can't be her," I said. "If it's her, we're lost. After I talk to her, she won't give us anything. We might have to pretend we're from different companies." Everyone on this side of the room, go to the large conference room on the north side of the building. You will register and be assigned to groups for corporate meetings and presentations starting tomorrow. This was our side of the hall. Everyone who had been here before looked around in confusion, as did the guards. People around us began to move towards the hall she indicated. Everyone on this side of the room, go to the auditorium on the south side of the building. A couple of Grace's assistants approached her and began to explain that she had made a mistake. Apparently, she was so confused that she forgot that her wireless microphone was still on. "Just shut up and do what I said," she ordered. There was obvious tension in her voice. When she said the word "just," you could clearly hear the T sound at the end, as if the word was made of concrete and she had smashed the end with a sledgehammer. The word "shut up" was even more accurate. It began with a long Z and ended again with that emphatically sharp T sound. And the word "damn" in her performance was so strong that it deprived the rest of the sentence of meaning. It seemed like all Grace really wanted to say was just shout "damn" as a sign of her annoyance. It seemed like she had just found herself in a very bad situation and was urgently looking for a way out. "Or I'll find someone who can," she added. All of her assistants on stage stepped back and began to look for other things to do. Grace quickly headed towards one of the exits, but a friendly employee blocked her way. He pointed to another door, as if to tell her that she was going the wrong way. Grace tilted her head, as if looking at him from a different angle, and he turned pale and almost hit his head against the wall, trying to clear her way. He seemed to realize that Grace had some kind of superpower that allowed her to introduce him to the unemployment line. I don't know what made Grace lose her composure, but something was clearly going on. Even during registration, there were problems. People kept telling us that's usually what Grace does. It was also obvious that Lou and I were the problem. To begin with, we didn't know what type of account we needed to register, so we didn't know which group to join when registering. The account parameters were outlined both in the email and in the package of documents, said the woman at the counter. "It's a pity Grace isn't here. Have you read the package?" Lou just looked at me, confused. I looked at him angrily. "Elvina, please tell me you read this damn package," he said. "You got a copy of it too," I said. "You're the boss, Lou. I'm just your assistant. It's your fault, not mine." "You'll soon become an unemployed assistant," he hissed. "I have a solution," said the woman. She called the guard, a large Hawaiian man, who hurried towards us. "Take these two to the auditorium," she said. "They can listen to Cal speak, which will give them an idea of the different types of accounts. They can then review the packet during lunch and register during the next session. Grace would probably do it differently, but right now that's all we can do." The security guard, who clearly did not want to walk through the entire huge building, noticed a golf cart that was used to deliver mail. He borrowed it, figuring that he would return it long before the delivery boy finished his delivery. He drove us quickly through the large building to the auditorium, much faster than Grace, who had to walk and constantly stop to answer questions. It turned out to be very bad. The security guard also decided to save even more time by ushering us through the side door of the auditorium past the line of people. This way he could quickly return the golf cart and get back to his business, which was doing nothing. I have always been amazed at people who are in such a hurry to return to idleness. As soon as we approached the door he showed us, everything went wrong. All the elements necessary for a disaster were lined up in one row. "Hey, Cal," the guard yelled at his boss. Cal looked up and waved back. Another security guard who was guarding the stage entrance opened the door, and two men, Cal and my boss Lou, tried to walk through the door at the same time. Many of those who were going to the other door saw that the entrance to the stage was open and there was no line, and they rushed there. Cal looked up, and I realized that Cal was the amazing surfer guy who had driven the Mustang on the beach this morning. At that same moment, something clicked in my head. I hadn't been able to see him up close this morning, but now we were only 2 feet apart, and my mind exploded with a flash of recognition. That fire was quickly put out because before my mind could fully process, Cal saw Lou smiling at him. Cal's face, already tanned from years of exposure to the sun, darkened even more as rage took over him. Cal rushed at Lou and hit him. Grace ran up. "Oh, damn," she said, looking at him. "Looks like you already know everything." "What, why?" Lou asked, slightly confused. "Get that bastard out of my building, now," Cal shouted. He was beside himself with rage. "Has he checked in yet?" The guards and Grace looked lost. "It doesn't matter," Cal said. "I know what company he works for. They will be blacklisted. We will never work with them as long as this bastard works there." "No," Lou said, trying to get up, with blood on his face and a swollen eye. "It looks like someone called the police because a couple of Honolulu police officers came over to figure out what happened. Someone reported a beating," one of the officers said. No one said a word, not even Lou. The officer took out a notepad and began questioning the first guard. "I was just passing by in my golf cart," he said. "I saw this crazy old white guy rolling on the floor and punching himself in the face. I have a lot of work. If you need, I can come to the station later and give a statement." Before the cop could stop him, he was already driving away in his golf cart. The policeman looked at the second guard. "I didn't see anything," he said. "I just arrived like you." He looked at the other guard, who was driving away in a golf cart. "Damn, he forgot me," he shouted and ran after the golf cart. "Sir, who beat you up?" asked the policeman. Lou, who was still confused, simply lay down on the floor, pretending to pass out. At that moment his phone rang. The policeman took the phone out of his pocket and answered. Ma'am, he's hurt. Tell the guards that Sergeant Kino Amaka has given you permission to come back here." He dialed another number on Lou's phone and called an ambulance. The policeman looked around at everyone, trying to figure out who to question. When he looked at me, I just shook my head. Grace spoke with him for a few minutes, which gave paramedics time to reach the site. "I need to look into this matter," the officer said. "Someone has to say something." Cal was still furious, and I noticed that the policeman didn't even dare approach him. Grace did all the talking. Events developed very quickly. Two more huge Hawaiians approached, pulled by a little girl. She had the same almond-shaped Asian eyes as Grace, but her skin was much lighter. She ran straight to Grace, who was the first person she noticed. Her hand grabbed Grace, who looked down and smiled, picking the girl up in her arms. The similarities between them were striking. The policeman approached the medics examining Lou. I went there too. Mary came up at the same moment, looked at Lou, and shook her head. "Is he okay? What's wrong with him?" she asked the doctors. "Well, from a medical point of view," said the first medic. "His ass kicked." "I agree," added the second medic. "Does he need to go to the hospital?" asked the policeman. "Not if they don't teach self-defense there," the first medic answered, laughing. "Who are you?" the policeman asked, turning to me. Everyone around me turned and looked at me. I didn't know what to say. I noticed Mary whispering something to Lou. I began. "She's his assistant," Mary said. "She wasn't here when it happened." "Great, just great," said the policeman. "Nobody knows what happened here." Grace immediately attacked him. She reproached him for using profanity in front of the child and for his lack of professionalism. She told him that at the next Chamber of Commerce meeting she would definitely talk about the whole incident and his behavior. She added that he was lucky that Cal left. The policeman then dejectedly lowered his head and apologized. Grace told him to return to the station, promising to later send statements from everyone involved, including the victim or whoever he was. But the policeman began. Grace simply looked at him and pointed towards the elevator. The little girl in her arms raised her hand and also pointed in the same direction. The policeman turned around and left. Then I noticed that Cal was really gone. Grace turned to her assistants and asked one of them to take Lou back to the hotel. "But I need to stay here," he said. "I need to register and get an account. We must clear up this misunderstanding. Why did this guy attack me?" The little girl in Grace's arms looked at Lou and pointed towards the elevator. "Did you hear what he said to the guards?" Grace asked calmly. I'll try to calm him down. Perhaps when he cools down, he will look at this from a business perspective rather than personal feelings. If he doesn't change his mind, nothing can be done. Wellwyn is not a publicly traded company. We do not have a board of directors. And there is no need for this. Cal owns 45% of the company. I own 39%, and 10% is held by some of our senior employees. Who owns the remaining 6%? I asked. Grace looked at me as if she wanted to bite my head off. She didn't even bother me with an answer. She just pointed to the little girl in her arms. I am, said the girl. I don't think she even knew what she was saying. She just answered because her mom pointed it out to her. As Lou tried to get to his feet, Grace called out to him. We'll be finished here today by 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Why don't you come back here for dinner at 6? Then she looked at me and added, You can come too. In the end, all this crap is your fault. She turned around and walked into the audience. We were taken back to the hotel on one of those shuttles. All the way Lou talked about how he could get painkillers for his face. We're on horseback, he said with a smile. Now they are obliged to give us an account. Everything worked out as well as possible, and You don't even know what? I asked. He didn't even try to get you to sleep with anyone, Mary spat. What? Lou began. Shut up, idiot, Mary said. You're not on a horse. In fact, you are even further from your goal than you were before. I'm filing for divorce. I'm tired of all this crap. No, Mary, he pleaded. Whatever I do is wrong, I will stop it. It's not about us, she replied. It's all about him. Before he left to give his speech, I really looked at this man. I thought about his motives and everything he had done, and from the look on his face, I knew everything I needed to know. No matter how it ends, you will lose. You're a damn loser, and you deserve to lose for what you did to him. I didn't do anything to him, Lou spat. This guy just started beating me up for no reason. If he gives us an account, I won't sue for assault. If he doesn't, I'll sue him, and he'll go to jail, and his reputation will be ruined. Lou, you idiot, she said. He owns this huge building. I'm sure he has several lawyers who will acquit him. He may not even need their services. I talked to several people. You have no witnesses who would claim that he touched you at all. No one admits to having seen anything, except for one guard who claims that you beat yourself up. And by the way, did you see the expression on his face? This man wants to kill you, and here, on his territory, he can do it and remain unpunished. This is all a shame. I won't go down with you. It's time for you to get what you deserve. You have caused this man more pain than anyone can imagine. I didn't do anything to him, Lou spat. Mary simply shook her head. You slept with his wife, you idiot, she spat. You destroyed his whole world, and he built a new one. And judging by the expression on his face, he is ready to destroy this world too, in order to burn you. I thought about the other women Mary had told me Lou had slept with before me. Who is his wife? I asked. Maybe we can talk to her and get her to help us. Alvina, shut up, she spat. You're as stupid as Lou. Don't you notice anything at all? She just looked at me, shaking her head. I heard a noise as if water was rushing through my ears, and I almost lost consciousness. She still said it. Cal is your husband Danny, Alvina, she said. That's why your detectives probably couldn't find him. They were looking for Danny Caldwell. Think about it. Caldwell. Cal as a first name. D as the middle initial, and Val as the last name. Their company is called Wellwyn. Cal Val and Grace Van. How do these two idiots still have jobs? She just looked at us. I think you'll lose her soon, she said. Lou just sat there stunned. Was it that loser? He said. He must be taking steroids. And his wife, I said. She was the awkward Asian girl he taught at his place. Now I remember. I went to his work the day after he left to see if they knew where he might be going. You know, I thought that if he had another job, he would need references. She cried all the time and did not speak to me, but continued to look at me, assessing me from head to toe, as if trying to evaluate my strength. This little brat took one look at my every weakness and used them to steal my husband. Mary started laughing. Alvina, you won a prize, she said. You're probably even dumber than Lou. First of all, she didn't steal Cal or Danny or whatever we call him now. You pushed him away yourself. You called him all sorts of names while this other idiot here had sex with you. Secondly, they are not married. Hawaii is still part of the S, and you never divorced him. I don't know about the emotional component, but legally you are still his wife. He became a multimillionaire after he left you, so I don't think you'll get much money from him, but that's just one of the questions I'm wondering. I looked at her. Why didn't you ever divorce him, Alvina? Did you wait 5 years for abandonment to be recognized or 7 years for him to be declared legally dead? How about 100 years because I love him and we're not getting divorced? I spat. Then another question arises, she said. He has a hot new Asian wife who is seductive and attractive. This trash looks better than you, Alvina. Despite her smaller breasts, she outshines you. She is younger and smarter. He is again surrounded by lawyers. Why hasn't he divorced you yet? Danny call. Why didn't she divorce you? The question hung in the air for several minutes after Grace asked it. She didn't need to, I said. She has everything she wants. She has this big jerk for sex, and his wife probably doesn't know anything about it. Grace crossed the room, and I noticed again how beautiful she was. She lay down on my lap and looked up at me. Either the wife knows everything perfectly well and is happy with it, or she may even be in cahoots with them. Grace raised her eyebrows in feigned shock. What's on your mind, Gracie Grace? I asked, taking her hand to stop her movement on my leg. What's on your mind? She retorted, asking the same question. It's unusual to see you lose your composure. I think our strategy should be to divide and conquer. And how do you propose to do this? I asked. First, you tell me what you're going to do with this guy, she said. Do you want to give his company an account or leave him with his nose? Hell no, I replied. I want to organize a nuclear war, as George Bush said. Call his company. Find out who their CEO is and tell him that we have decided not to work with them at this time due to an incident with their representative. Tell him that we like a lot of the things they do, but we have no information about their products or services because the person they sent didn't have a presentation. Top it off by saying that we would like to work with them, but let them send someone else and never send that bastard again. I like this plan, she said. We give them carrots and they themselves punish him with a stick. They'll probably fire him on the spot. Part 2, what do we do about his attack claim? Talk to his wife, I said. I think you should do it yourself, she said quietly. Actually, I was hoping you would. You need to deal with this once and for all. You have too many unanswered questions. I have no questions, I said. Yes, and how? She blurted out. Damn, you still love her. You and she should sit down and discuss everything. Maybe I won't even strangle her, as I've dreamed of doing all these years. Hell, maybe I'll get lucky and she won't want you anymore. Even with all the improvements I've made, you're still a bit of damaged goods right now. Actually, what I meant was that you should talk to that guy's wife, I said. Oh, I thought you were talking about your wife, she said. You are my wife, I said. Everyone knows this. Everyone thinks so, she said. Damn, I wish this were true. Elvina. Damn it, I wish this were true, I said. Elvina, do at least a little work here, dear, Mary said. As I told you less than 3 seconds ago, this man still loves you. Why would he do this? I asked. Since we left Welwyn, I haven't been able to stop crying. You said it yourself, Mary. I hurt him, and badly. He probably hates me. And he has this crap. I hate her, Mary. I hate the hell out of her. Mary grinned. Why do you hate her? What? I asked. Your future employment with the company largely depends on it. That idiot over there, she pointed to Lou, who was sleeping on the couch in their room, destroyed his career and his marriage. The painkillers put him to sleep, and Mary refused to let him sleep in the same bed with her since she said she was divorcing him. Think logically, she continued. If you want to keep your job, your best hope is to sign a contract with them. Remember how my idiot soon-to-be ex-husband thought he had an advantage yesterday because your ex beat him up. In fact, you do have an advantage. You need to do two things. First, distance yourself from Lou so as not to go down with him. And secondly, this cunning bitch is now your best friend. Go and talk to her. She already said you should come to dinner tonight, didn't she? I nodded, but my face still showed pain. So, after dinner, explain to her that if she gives you the bill and arranges for you to become a representative of her company, you will simply leave and not bother her anymore. You would be provided for, if not for life, then at least for as long as your company wants to advertise with them. And Elvina, be smart with this chance you've been given. Go back to school and learn all this new tech stuff so you don't get sent into early retirement. She looked at me and smiled. But we both know you won't do that, right? She grinned. You don't want to be friends with that sneaky bitch because, like you said, you hate the hell out of her. Even though this bitch has never said a single bad word to you, you can't stand her. She fucking modeled herself after you, minus the breasts. But you just want to beat her up, don't you? Elvina, do you want to throw her on the ground and hit her in the face until your arms get tired? Yees, I said loudly. I no longer cried and energy flowed through my body. Elvina, have you ever fought in your life? She asked. I looked at her. No, I admitted. So you will most likely get beaten, right? She asked. I'm sure I could beat her, I blurted out. Believe me, Elvina, I couldn't, she grinned. Do you even know why your hands are turning into claws right now? Do you know why you hate this woman so much? Because she's a sneaky bitch, and I don't like her, I blurted out. Elvina, this is how many women look at you. They hate you without knowing because you look the way you look. It's usually even more specific. Maybe some guy they like is always staring at your breasts and doesn't notice them, so they hate you for having something or someone they want. Does this mean anything to you? I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. Elvina, forget all that nonsense you read in magazines about female solidarity and how we all have to stick together to find our place in a male-dominated world. The people who deal the most insidious blows to women are not men. These are other women. Women just hate women. I read an article about a business that was founded by a woman. She was wronged during the divorce. I think her husband left for another woman or something like that. In general, she only hired women. Everything went fine for a while, and then they started getting very sarcastic. They created all sorts of cliques in the office and began to whine and complain about being assigned physical work. They believed that the work involved in lifting and sending something was less valuable. To reduce tension in the office, she hired a man to fill these positions. He wasn't Adonis or anything like that. It was just a guy. He was married and had a child. In less than 2 months, he had to quit because all these women who previously didn't even want to go near the warehouse started fighting for the guy and his job. He was not interested in any of them, and they only pursued him to prove that they were more desirable than other women. What does this have to do with me? I asked. You only hate her because she has what you want most, she spat. And instead of trying to make peace with her to save your job and your future, you would rather fight her, even though you already said that you have no chance of getting him back. This is stupid, I said. I think I'm stupid. No, stupid, she said. It's called love. Then I started crying again. Damn it, stop crying, she said. I'm not sure the carpet will hold up to all these tears, and when there's a flood here, I don't know how to swim. I can't help myself, I said. Do you know how much it hurts me? Elvina, why do you think Danny, or whatever his name is, beat up that idiot? She asked. Think about it. He's got a smart chick, a successful business, a great life, and probably $1 million. But he didn't look very happy. If his life was full of joy and he would move on, why do you think he attacked Lou? I just looked at her. Come on, Elvina. Connect the dots. Lou isn't a threat to him, and he doesn't know it, but you never was. You've got poor old Lou crawling on his lap. But he just looked at Lou and did what you just described, wanting to do to the cunning bitch. And now we are back to where we started. Your husband still loves you. She looked at her watch and shook her head. It's good that I'm smart and not beautiful. Most people don't pay attention to me. But I notice everything. Did you notice the girl? A little version of a sneaky bitch, I said. Yes, she's already like a mother. I'll bet you $50 that girl isn't her baby, Mary said. I bet, I said. Although it doesn't matter to me. Haven't you seen her eyes and face shape? It's like looking at a photograph of her when she was young. Remember this, said Mary. You better go and clean yourself up. Apply more moisturizer to hide bags under your eyes. You look terrible. She crossed the room and hooked her leg around Lou's waist, rolling him off the couch and onto the floor. Why did you do this? He groaned. It hurts. Because it's time for us to get ready, she spat. You could have just said it, he said. I'm in a lot of pain right now. My head hurts and I can barely see out of my right eye. You're lucky, she laughed. Your face is badly damaged. At least you don't have to look at him. Elvina, call room service. I need a large paper bag. Okay, I said. But I don't think we're expected to bring anything, I chuckled. That's not why I'm asking for a package, she grinned. It's there to cover Lou's face, so I won't see him. Mary, can I have another chance? Lou groaned. I don't want to get a divorce. I love you. Always loved. She simply shook her head and walked into the bathroom to start getting ready. An hour later, we were already in the elevator going up to the top floor of the Welwyn building. With each passing moment, my stomach became more and more knotted. The people below seemed to know who we were and why we were here. When we reached the 5th floor, the elevator stopped. We had to transfer to another elevator, which required a special key to get to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, there she was. She studied me carefully with her eyes. You look like crap, she said. Then she shook her head. She looked at Lou and started laughing. He looks like a raccoon with a disease. Mary laughed too. I wanted to make him wear a bag over his head, but I thought it would be better in the long run and less humiliating for him to just learn to deal with the consequences of his actions, she said. Okay, we have a lot to discuss, Grace said. I made a reservation at a great restaurant. We can eat while we do business. I love negotiations. She entered the elevator. Is Danny or Cal coming there? Asked Mary. Oh, of course not, said Grace. If he even saw your husband, he would lose his temper. You know what men are like. Sometimes I find it difficult to control it. We don't need to make things worse. But don't worry, whatever we decide, he will agree. He can't refuse me. She looked me straight in the eyes when she said this. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. She smiled, noticing my pain. I couldn't help it, and tears flowed down my cheeks. Oh, damn, she said. She reached into her purse and took out a handkerchief. Very carefully, she patted my face and wiped away my tears. If you mess this up, I'll ruin you, she hissed. Then she entered the elevator. I wondered why she cared so much about dinner tonight if Danny wasn't going to come. Perhaps it is a matter of maintaining a corporate image. They were one of those young, fast-growing companies. I think projecting the image of a fun workplace where all the employees were extremely happy was part of their strategy. I tried to get into the elevator, but she blocked my way. I was about to tell her that I could pretend to be happy if she gave me some time, when she almost growled at me. You're not going, she said. I can handle it, I said. I can pull myself together. I won't disgrace you. I need to talk to you about something too. I sounded desperate. SHH, she said. Her voice sounded almost compassionate. I have done a lot for you. Don't make me regret it. Remember what I said. Then the elevator doors closed on me. I didn't know what to do. Should I go back to the hotel? It seems like no one bothered to tell me what to do. Cal Danny. Looks like no one bothered to tell you what to do, I said. Even seeing her from afar, I felt something inside. She started wearing her hair in a long ponytail, just like I always liked. Her face looked a little older than it should have, considering it had only been 5 years. My heart beat even faster when she turned to me. She reached for the wall to keep her balance. I really thought she was going to fall. I thought we were going to dinner, she said. No, we'll stay here, I said, waiting for her reaction. You You and me, she said hesitantly. That's how I understand the meaning of the word we, I said. She slowly walked towards me, and it seemed like she was trying very hard not to rush towards me and hug me. She hesitantly began to raise her hands towards me, and I took a step back. Please don't, I said. I don't know if I said it more for her benefit or for my own good. My heart was beating like crazy. I almost fainted from being so close to her again. I thought I was through all this shit. Danny, She started to say something, but a loud bell rang. The elevator opened right behind her, and a guy with a cart loudly wheeled her out of the elevator and into the cafeteria. Warm evening, Frankie, I said. Could you take this up into the garden? Her eyes opened wide, and she smiled. When Frankie returned to the elevator with the cart, she looked at me again. I can't believe this is happening, she said. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what we're doing or why. I'm just glad. Then she started crying again. I just wanted to take her into my arms and make all her tears disappear. Actually, Grace arranged this, I said. Her eyes opened wide again. She thinks we should talk. She says it will be good for both of us. She thinks you need to tell me something and I need to hear it. She thinks this will give us both the opportunity to move on. I think she thinks that if you can get it off your chest, you can find relief. And for some reason, this will help me deal with all the pain and anger that she thinks I still feel. Her smile faded a little. I don't think that was what she wanted to hear. Okay, I think Frankie has everything ready, I said. The polite thing to do would be to place your hand on her waist and gently guide her up the circular staircase to the roof. But I wasn't sure what would happen if I touched it. When we got to the roof, the garden and play area amazed her. No one expects to see a real jungle on the roof. I think the gazebo and pool are a bit much, but it was Grace's idea. Do you still like lobster? I asked. She smiled and nodded her head. She did that little movement where she bit her bottom lip that always made me want her right there. Do you still hate them? She asked. That's why I eat steak, I smiled. We sat down opposite each other and started eating. She looked at me as the sun began to set. Danny, I never stopped. Alvina, maybe you can just say what you wanted to tell me, I said. Her eyes narrowed a little because she wasn't used to me dictating how things would go. But now I make my own decisions, and she will have to come to terms with it. Or not. Danny, I know what you saw, and I'm so sorry. You have no idea how sorry I am and how much I wish this never happened. But there's a reason, and I just ruined everything. I ruined my whole life for something I already had, and tears flowed from her eyes like I had never seen before. I haven't seen or heard pain like this since the night I left her. I began to realize that somehow her pain was at least as bad as mine. Elvina, we have all the time you need, I said. I extended my hand to her, and she took it. Her touch was like grabbing a live wire. My brain instantly restored synaptic connections that had not been used for a long time. Something indescribable was happening inside. I led her to the gazebo and soft pillows there. I sat down and she sat next to me. Not only did she not let go of my hand, but she pressed herself against me, as we sometimes did in bed when we were really close. I'll start from the beginning, she said. This will probably make you hate me even more, but I need to get this weight off my chest. Do you remember your friend from college? Yes, I replied. She left me for some football player. She tried to come back to me after he left her, but I was already with you. She complained that he never really wanted her. He didn't take her on dates or introduce her to friends. He just had sex with her and then suddenly stopped communicating with her. Danny, it was me, she said. You gave me a locket. She unbuttoned the top of her dress and took it out. I couldn't help but look at her breasts, and they seemed even bigger than I remembered. I still looked at the medallion. She opened it, and I was stunned by what I saw. Inside were 2 photographs of me. She noticed my surprise. What did you think you would see there? She asked. Probably Lou, I blurted out. Danny, you're an asshole, she said. I love only you. That's my whole problem. Anyway, when you gave me that locket, it wasn't about him. You could have given me flowers, chocolates, or something else. It just lets me know that you are the one I need. I suddenly became obsessed with you. I didn't care what you looked like. I didn't care what others thought of you. I wanted you. But you were such a good guy. I practically threw myself on your neck, and you remained faithful to that damn Belinda. I realized that you care not about my appearance, but about me. Damn, Danny, my mom was the older version of me, and you remember what happened to her. I needed someone to love me forever. You were the one I wanted, and Belinda was just getting in the way. I arranged for one of the guys on the football team to start courting her with the intention of separating the two of you. I promised him sex if he did it. She started crying while telling me this. I knew it was difficult for her to talk about all this. I started running my fingers through her long golden hair. She raised her head, and I removed the elastic to let her hair fall down. Danny, I know how hard it was for you to get over the breakup with that girl. I tried to make this as easy as possible for you. I came to see you every day and learned a lot about you. I also constantly let you know that you can have me anytime and anywhere you want. But you didn't do that. I started to think that you only want me as a friend. And there are a few more things you need to know because they are important. First of all, I actually slept with that football player guy. I promised to do it, and let's face it, I was a healthy girl and needed sex back then too. But it was only once, and it led to the longest sexual pause of my life while I waited for you to decide that you wanted me. If you remember, I almost lost you. I don't think you would have slept with that girl on the first date. But if things had worked out between you two, I might have to do something with her. Even then I felt that I didn't deserve you, and that I stole you. But Danny, I love you so much. And we succeeded, didn't we? I nodded and smiled. In a way, it's nice, I said. And like you said, we worked it out, so if you're looking for forgiveness or anything like that from me for this, you can forget about it. Why? She asked in shock. We were happy. Guilty. I like it when you call me that, she said. I don't let anyone else call me that. Vina, what I meant was that I have no idea how things would have worked out between me and Belinda. Very few people marry their college girlfriends. There's also the fact that if she was willing to leave me simply because another guy showed interest in her, then she didn't love me, and I massaged her temples, and she held my hand. Her left breast was pressed against my stomach. Her eyes suddenly opened. And what? She asked. And I think I was sure that you loved me until then. I began. Until what? She asked. Until I realized it wasn't, I said. I was caught in unexpected storms in the ocean that came out of nowhere. 1 second the sun is shining, and suddenly you are rowing on a board to the shore, lightning flashes everywhere, and the waves become huge. I have never seen such a drastic change as the one that happened to Elvina when I said that she did not love me. Her hand moved faster than anything I had ever seen. She hit me so hard and fast that I felt dizzy. Don't you dare say that, she spat and began to cry again. You can say you don't love me. You can call me a woman of easy virtue. You can say you never want to see me again, Danny. But don't ever say I don't love you, because I simply don't. Why do you think I'm so unhappy all the time? I lost our home. I live in a tiny, disgusting apartment just so I can spend most of what I earn and what I can get from Lou on private investigators to try to find you. Last year, I spent over $12,000 just looking for you. I have a lot of fans, and I refuse everyone because they are not you. Then she looked at me, and I saw rage and pain in her eyes. Don't you understand, Danny? Haven't you listened to your own damn song? What? I asked. Which song? When the pain ends, she said. Don't you remember the words? Without looking back, I know I can live without you. I was puzzled. Yes, Danny, she hissed. You left and never looked back. You've built yourself a wonderful life here in paradise. You, as the song says, can live without me. Damn, you live better, much better without me. But have you ever thought that I can't live without you? Elvina, it hurt me to see you with Lou, and both of you. They called you names and made fun of you, she said quietly. Danny, I didn't mean a word. If I could take it all back, I would. You just don't understand how much I loved you. Do you remember how often we skipped work and just stayed home, lying in bed together after being married for 12 years? Damn, you and I have no sick leave or vacation pay left. I smiled, remembering this. Somehow, despite her outburst, we hugged each other again, talking. Danny, this whole Lou thing was about you. I thought I was using him, but he manipulated me. I wanted you to work with me in the same company. Maybe we wouldn't be in the same department, but I hated being apart even for 8 hours a day. I always said, I wish Danny would work here. Lou knew the owner of the company you worked for. They loved you and didn't even think about firing you. And you were so loyal that you would never leave on your own. So, just like with Belinda, I had to take you with me. Lou promised to provide your company with a replacement who would do your job just as well, but being younger and fresh out of school, would do it for much less money. Lou even persuaded our company to pay for the training costs. Then you would come to work for us, and I could come to you any time I wanted. I never cheated on you, Danny, and I know it was wrong, but I wanted you so bad. I thought it was all my idea, but Lou was just manipulating me. I never enjoyed sex with him, and his ego couldn't handle it. That's where the whole, "Oh, your husband is a weakling" thing came from. That's why I knew you would be fired. I didn't care if you got fired because I wanted you to be with me. I also didn't know that you would ever see or hear this. Danny, if I really felt the way you think I did, would I have run out of the office the way I did? You were everything to me. I know what I did was wrong, but I've always been cunning. That was my last plan because it blew up in my face and ruined my life. Danny, I would do anything to get that time back. I would do anything to have you be a part of my life again. I would become your woman of easy virtue, your casual lover, anyone, just to be with you again. What about Grace? I asked. She seems to think you don't love her. To hell with it, Danny. If I have to share you with her, it's still better than nothing. But you have to remember that in my ideal world, everything revolves around the two of us, just us. Maybe she can spend time with you, and I can spend mine, but I don't like women, and in my mind, you belong to me, and only me. There's no room for anyone else here. She could be there, and I'll accept it. But in my mind, there will always be just the two of us. Elvina, it will always be just the two of us, he said, repeating what I had just told him. I love you, Danny. You completely fill my heart, and I want to completely fill yours. I'll be honest with you. I will try to take up every square inch of space in your heart until there is no room left for anyone else. During the time we were apart, the only person I interacted with, the only man I spoke to, let alone had sex with, was Lou. I thought you already knew about him. Plus, he pays for private investigators to find you. I also hate having sex with him. He doesn't make me feel the way you do. There's nothing special about it. It's like a punishment that I have to accept for what I did to you. Do you think you can forgive me? I promise. I swear to you that for the rest of our lives, from this moment on, I will never touch another man or allow anyone else to touch me. No other man has ever touched my heart. It will always be just the two of us, he repeated again. Then his face became sad. He stopped stroking my hair and moved slightly. Talk about unexpected storms. I realized that I was somehow mistaken. One moment it seemed like he was about to make love to me, he was going to make me his again, and the next moment it was like he was pushing me away. Well, Elvina, thank you very much for coming, he said, straightening up and getting to his feet. You really clarified a lot of things. Grace was right, I do feel better, he said. He led me to the elevator. Grace will probably contact you, he said. I think we can arrange everything so that you and even Lou can keep their works. Tell him I'm sorry about his face. My fault. The next moment I was already in a regular elevator and crying again. I got out of the elevator just at the worst possible moment. I walked out of the building, sobbing, just as a grinning Grace walked inside. So, how did it go? She asked. Like what? I asked. I hated this bitch even more. Apparently, this bitch somehow had my husband in her grasp, and he couldn't let her go. Fury took over me, and I swung at her. She dodged. Have you ever gotten into a fight before? She asked. I shook my head, and she laughed. This is so sweet, she said. Look, I know you're angry about something. Tell me, did you lie to him? I already told you not to ruin this. It took me hours to get him to agree. I just stared at her. Okay, I shouted. You won. He's yours. But I will never, ever give up on trying to get him back. Yes, I know, she grinned. You love him and everything. Just tell me how you ruined everything. For what? To make you laugh at me even more? Like you really care? I started. She pulled me back into the building and pointed out the guard, who ran up as if there was fire under his feet. She pointed to the beauty salon, and he quickly pulled out a key ring containing 100 keys and opened the door. He looked around for the light switch, and she told him not to bother and thanked him. Yes, you stupid fool, she began. I really don't care. I want him to be happy at any cost. So tell me how you ruined everything. I told her how I told him everything. Wait, you said you were ready to share him with me? She asked. I'll do anything for him, I said. So what the hell went wrong? She asked. Looks like you did everything right. I don't know, I said. I told her about the last things I told him, and her eyes widened. Well, now you've really ruined everything, she hissed. And I just thought that you two had blown the sex thing out of proportion to such an extent that reality could never live up to those expectations. Baby, you didn't just burn the bridges you just built, you blew them to hell. It will take some time to get things right if we can do it at all. Of course, it's partly my fault. Why is it your fault? I asked. What did I do wrong? Why are you even trying to help me? I thought we hated each other. I wouldn't call it hate, she said. We just both want the same thing. In your case, it's to the point of despair and fear. In my case, I can't be with him right now. I screwed him up just as much as you did. Only in my case, it happened quite recently and much worse. I looked at her and my eyes narrowed. Why are we here? I asked. This is not Welwyn. This is some kind of beauty salon. Dear, she smiled, Cal and I are Welwyn. We own this entire building. Whoever owns this salon simply rents space from us. We're not going to break anything, and we need a place to talk and see if we can fix your mistake. My life is bad enough as it is. I don't need Cal to find another reason to be sad about you. I still don't understand what I did wrong, I said. You know more about him than anyone on Earth, right? She asked. I nodded. Who are the 3 people on Earth who mean the most to him? She asked. His mother, his father, and probably you, I said. She simply smiled. You need to watch out for that jealousy, she said. Of the 3, you guessed only one. I'm on this list, but I'm probably in 3rd place and always have been. If I had played correctly, I could have been first, but fate and my stupid character played against me. To figure out how we can fix this, I need to fill in a few blanks. This could be a long conversation. I have time, I said. That's for sure, because I fired you, she smiled. So, the last thing you remember about Cal is him leaving you while a Tina Turner song was playing in your house, right? I nodded, and just the memory of it made me want to cry. Okay, it was hard for him too, she said. He did some very stupid things. Do you know that he picked up a woman on the road and she tried to rob him? He tried to get her to kill him. You really shocked him a lot. Either way, he just kept driving until the road ended. The bitch who tried to rob him was wearing a Hawaii t-shirt. He took this as a sign. He sold his Mustang and came here. He got a job in it at one of the large hotels. While he was working at the old company where we met, he was tinkering with the program that would later become the basis of Welwyn. Since he had nothing to do when he wasn't working, he completed the program. He began to realize that she could turn into something big, but he really had no idea how big it could become. He called me one Saturday afternoon when he decided to start his own company. You should know that I secretly had a crush on him from the first day we worked together. I was really looking forward to us working together and was very upset when I was told that I had to replace him rather than become his colleague. My boss should have calmed me down and explained that this was all just so you two could work together. I was very angry at you for taking him away from me. That's why I treated you so badly when you came into the office crying, trying to find him. In any case, as soon as he called me that Saturday afternoon, I was ready for anything. I withdrew all the money from my account and bought a ticket to Hawaii. I didn't even go back to work to say I was leaving. We spent about 4 months rewriting the code to make it more universal and stable. We became even better friends. I wanted us to become something more, but I wasn't stupid. I knew how much he loved you, and I understood that it would take him a long time to get over you. You had that light, and of course those breasts, but it was more than that. You had this confidence. He gave it to you, didn't he? I nodded. Basically, we didn't have a lot of money, so we rented an apartment and worked our shitty jobs, eating tuna and pineapples, as all the internet rumors said. Sometimes we'd let ourselves get wild and go to Burger King, but mostly it was tuna and pineapple. We started slowly, and over the next 6 months, we increased the number of websites we had contracts with, as well as our customer base. You have to understand that he called me 2 months after you broke up, so within a year of him leaving you, we were already making money and it was growing quickly. Once the money started coming in, we could have moved to a larger place, but we didn't. We stayed in our shitty little apartment, sleeping on the same couch. I slept with him, almost naked, and nothing happened. You were still on his mind. I made the stupidest mistake right after we started making money. I called my sister. Mona was a year older than me and completely lost. I thought I could get her to work with us and help her get her life back on track. I wanted to get her out of addiction and give her a stable life. It didn't work. Some people don't want to work for something. There is no way to help them. Mona was 23 years old at the time, had 2 children from different fathers, and was addicted to several types of illegal substances. She left her children with my parents, who took care of them most of the time. When she came here, she moved in with us and continued to do nothing but take illegal substances. We had a big party to celebrate our first corporate client. Cal drank a little that night, and as you know, he doesn't drink. I think it was you, she said. How could I asked. He still loved you, stupid, and I missed you very much. I think we all knew we were on the cusp of something big, and you weren't there to share it with him. Overall, I had a great time at that party. I danced and hung out with a lot of guys, and I did it on purpose. Like you, I was damn cunning, and like you, it backfired on me. My big plan was to make him jealous. He didn't even notice because he was completely drunk. When I solemnly entered our apartment, I arrived with my shoe missing and my hair disheveled. I was ready to make a scene. I was ready to tell him that if he didn't like the idea of what I could do with other guys, then he better make me his. God, what an idiot I was. I walked into the apartment, pretending to be drunk and used, and saw Cal and my sister in bed together on the same couch that he and I slept on. I woke them up, called them all sorts of names, and left the apartment. He tried to talk to me several times, and I even quit the company. I rented my own apartment and went back to work in it at a hotel. I should have noticed how confused he was, but I was too damn jealous to realize it. Of course, a few weeks later, I found out that my sister was pregnant. I moved away from them even more. Then I began my second great scheme. You see, I wanted to punish Cal. If he was going to fall in love with some woman and get her pregnant, if he wanted to be with anyone other than you, it had to be me. Manny Manaluga was a local surfing champion. He's the same guy who taught Cal how to surf. They are still very good friends. I started dating him and often showed up when they were hanging out to annoy Kala. When Manny asked me to marry him, I agreed. I never expected it to last long. Manny has been engaged 6 times. I just wanted to do it to annoy Cal. Damn, I loved him as much as you do, and he hurt me badly. Anyway, Manny got into an accident. When I was in the hospital visiting Manny, they brought my sister there too. She almost died on the operating table. I couldn't help it. No matter how much I hated that bitch for stealing Cal from me, she was still my sister. She had good days and bad. I think she knew she was going to die. One day when I came to see her, maybe it was because of the painkillers, but she was in a strange mood. She started telling me all the disgusting things she had ever done to me since I was a child. And then she confessed to me how she deliberately used Cal's depression at that party and how much he missed you against him. She gave him something to drink and put on him when she had the most favorable moment for pregnancy. He called her Elvina all the time. She planned to get pregnant so Cal would support her until the baby grew up. She also saw how much I was into him and just wanted him, like everything else I ever had. I felt like the biggest fool in the world, she said. Who's the biggest? I asked. You, she chuckled. You were the first to lose him, and for an even stupider reason. I nodded and had to admit that she was right. I've been punishing the wrong person this whole time, she continued. I felt like such an idiot. It was my own fault. If I had just stayed with him at the party like usual, she would never have been able to do this. If I had just been patient, Cal and I would be together. But by the time I found out about all this, I was already engaged to a disabled man. With a man I liked but didn't love, and doing a job I hated just to try to punish the man I loved for something he didn't do. I never visited my sister again. I hated that bitch more than I could have ever imagined. I still married Manny because it was the only right thing and a kind of atonement for my stupidity. My job at the hotel couldn't cover the costs of Manny's treatment and mounting medical bills. I went and talked to Call about going back to work. We were not yet in the Wellwen building at that time, but we had a good office. I didn't know what to expect, but we had a long conversation. I asked him if I could get a job at the company, and he laughed in my face. I was a little offended until he said that I didn't need a job because I owned part of the company. Elvina, I even have my own office with my name on the door. He put my share into a separate account. If I didn't already love him so much, I would have started loving him then. I reminded him that I left him and quit my job. I wasn't really there during the hardest times when they moved from our apartment to offices. He told me that anyone who strives for success by screwing over their best friend and taking away what they worked hard for deserves nothing. I treated him badly for 8 months over something that wasn't his fault, and he still considered me his best friend. My stupid sister fell into a coma and died before the doctors could deliver the baby. She was supported on machines for another month until they were able to give birth to Elva. Cal and I are raising her, and she is a very happy little girl, and her father worships the ground she walks on. This is not the way he would want to have a child, and her mother was not the woman he would want to have a child with. But Dynamite can't separate him from his daughter, and neither can you. But I began. You, like everyone else, thought that Cal was her father, and I was her mother because she looked like me, right? She asked. Worse, I said. I thought she was your daughter, but I had no idea who her father was. It makes sense, she said. So when you started all this nonsense about you and him being together, he got mad. No matter how much he loves you, he won't get involved with someone who can't accept his child. I really didn't know she was his, I said. Elvina, he named her after you. Do you really think that I would let him call her Elve if she were mine? Get a grip, she said. So I really got into trouble, huh? I asked. Maybe not, she said, smiling. After all, I arranged for you to be fired. So I owe you a job. I'm terrible at this whole computer stuff, and he probably won't want me around, I said. It's true, she said, but you must be able to do something. Just let me handle this. Called Annie. Just let me handle this, I told her the next afternoon. Isn't that what you told me, Grace? Yes, Cal, she said, smiling at me. I settled everything the way you would like. You gave that idiot the bill and convinced his wife not to divorce him. You gave him everything he needed to keep his damn job, and somehow Elvina got fired. How is this similar to what I would like? Well, in exchange for him signing a paper agreeing not to sue you, thus preventing the possibility of you getting a criminal record, I gave his company a Tier 1 account, she said. I looked at her like she was crazy. I convinced his wife that she was in a hurry, she continued. She should squeeze all the money she can out of him before she divorces him. I told her that she should wait until he was fired to divorce him. I thought it would bring you more pleasure. She agreed because I offered internships in our summer program for both of her sons while they were in college. Think about it. He'll get fired and then divorced at the same time. Plus, his kids will come home after every summer telling you how awesome you are. This will really get him. Yes, maybe in 20 years, when this happens, I said angrily. And Grace, you should have given them at least a level 2 score. They would get more screens and outlets, and we would get more money. They are a fairly large company, the first level for a small business. Cal, she grinned. You developed the software, and I came up with the pricing structure and billing levels. I beckoned their director with a level 2 carrot. They can go to level 2. When? I asked. I knew Grace had some nasty traits. As soon as they fire Lou, she grinned. I was assured that this would happen on the second or third day after his return. They'll let him work for a couple of days so he'll think everything's okay. And then, when he feels confident, they throw him out for unsatisfactory performance. This guy can't even find a table, let alone create one. I gave them a discount so we could watch him get fired over Skype. What about Elvina? I asked. I told her honestly so she could start looking for a job, she said. If she ever calls or shows up here, I'll let you handle it. Dealing with your women is not part of my job description. You were right, I said quietly. Talking to her and getting reassurance was the best decision for both of us. It's a hard blow, but we're no longer right for each other. It's time to move on. By the way, I have a date tonight. What do you have? She asked. Don't start getting upset, I said. You're a married woman, and I'm tired of being alone. For some reason, she just shook her head. Oh, before you go on your date, she said, you should probably stop by the house to meet the new nanny I hired. Elva met her this morning, and she already loves her. If you are with Elva and love her, she suits me, I said. Cal, she lives with you, Grace said. Big deal, I said. The nanny's rooms are at the other end of the apartment from my room and Elva's room. I probably won't see her often. What was the last one's name? Cal, she said. The idea is to get you a live-in nanny so Elva doesn't have to run around the whole building. And so you can focus on work. Maybe this way you won't be running up the damn steps in the middle of meetings or holding meetings on your garden roof while playing with your daughter. Who knows, after you get to know her better, you might want to date her too. I spent the rest of the day checking accounts and calling new clients to see how they were doing. There was no time to go home before the date. I decided that I would meet the new nanny in the morning. Maybe I'll even sleep longer and have breakfast with her. The last nanny was a 57-year-old woman and looked like a hobbit. Grace had a long history of hiring ugly women to be my secretaries and nannies. I knew Grace would thoroughly vet the woman and make sure she had good references before hiring her. There was also the fact that even with a nanny, at least one of Elva's huge guards was always in the apartment if I wasn't there, so I wasn't too worried. The date ended quite early. There was simply no chemistry between us. As I rode the elevator up to my apartment, I wondered when was the last time I went out and actually had a good time with someone. As soon as I entered the apartment, my guard left and went home to his family. I sat down on the sofa and wondered for the 100th time that day where she was. Even though things didn't work out between us, I knew I would always love Elvina, but maybe it was time for that divorce. I looked at the coffee table and saw a bunch of drawings that Elva had drawn. They were little people, but pretty good for a 3-year-old. I liked that the nanny kept her busy with something creative that developed her mind, and not just seated in front of the TV or computer. In the morning, I will definitely compliment her. Of course, this also confirmed my theory that Grace had again hired a 60-year-old woman who probably didn't know how to use a computer. I took a shower and went to bed. I was exhausted. I must have been a lot more tired than I thought, because I didn't notice anything until I felt a tickling sensation on my stomach. My eyes opened wide, and in the darkness I could barely make out the face in front of me. You always liked it, she whispered. I was shocked. You should have told me, she whispered again. Oh God, I breathed. Elvina, we shouldn't. We really should, she said. How much I missed that. The last word was drawn out as she went limp on me, her chest heaving, and I could feel her cunt squeezing and trembling around my cock. Maybe you should start dating and making love to your wife instead of trying to replace her, she said. From what you told me, you've had enough practice, I said. Danny, I did it, she said, and I regret it every time I think about it. I lost 5 years with you because of this. It was the worst mistake of my life, and I swear I will never repeat it. If you need to punish me, you can do it. But I'm not a monster. I'm just a woman who made a mistake. You know that I love you. I've always loved it. And if you had even a piece of brain, you would understand that no fat, ugly, 50-year-old man will ever take your place in my life or in my heart. And you meanly hit me yesterday, she said, kissing me again. How did I meanly hit you? I asked. Danny, you never told me about Elva, how you got her, or what happened to you. You didn't give me a chance to tell you that I can accept and love every part of you, including your child. You just threw me out the door. I'm not very proud of how she came about, I said, but I love my angel so much that I would never give her up for. I would never want you to do that, she said. I just want you back, and you want me back too. You love me. 3 days later, Lou was called into the office. He missed Elvina in many ways. He promised Mary that he would never cheat on her again. But after the trip to Hawaii and all those women in bikinis, being in a room with Mary, he longed for some relief. On the other hand, he was a hero in the office for landing an endorsement deal with Welwyn. Even some of the young, ambitious employees asked him how he did it. Some begged to go with him on the next trip. Entering the meeting room, he felt great. He sat down and his boss sat him down in front of the computer. Lou, I need you to look at your department's expenses for the month and explain this transportation item to me, he said. Oh, and you did great with Welwyn. I bet you're happy for Elvina, huh? What do you mean? Asked Lou. She returned to her husband. She was so excited when she called to tell her which fund to donate her latest check to. Lou just stared at the computer in front of him. He had no idea how to access the spreadsheet. He barely knew how to turn the damn thing on. Hurry up, Lou, his boss said. I don't know how to do this, Lou said. The young man stood up and sighed heavily. Lou, computer skills are a requirement for your job, he said. Everyone here respects you and appreciates the services you have provided to the company for the last 14 years, but I have to fire you. 5 minutes later, Lou was in his office, putting his things into one small white box. It was pathetic to see how little he actually accumulated during his career in this building. His sons were toddlers when he started working here. They were now grown men about to go to college and start their own careers. Sorry, said a voice behind him. Lou turned to see an attractive young woman standing behind him. She looked like one of their interns. This must be one of those students they hired to deliver mail and documents. This one was attractive. She was chewing gum and looking through the files she was carrying. Are you Lou Grant? She said. Yes, dear, he said. They changed their minds, he thought. She handed him the folder. You have been charged, she said. Have a good day. 6 months later, Lou was moving into his new small apartment. His divorce was final and his wife took everything. Lou looked around the small room and shook his head. He blamed that damn Elvina for everything. It was partly his fault, but if he had never seen how big her breasts were, he probably never would have pursued her. After Mary divorced him, he tried to contact Elvina and learned that she no longer worked at Welwyn. She didn't work at all. She was simply relaxing and taking care of her husband and their daughter. He asked her to put in a good word for him because he was having trouble finding a job. He was desperate. He was ready for anything. He looked around the small studio apartment with tiles in the corner and a sofa bed against the wall. The window was drafty and the plumbing in the tiny bathroom was leaking, but that was all he could imagine by allowance due to his work as a night watchman at a warehouse on the street. His wife got his car from the settlement and his sons now shared her car, so he had to take the bus to work. He looked through the mail and found a postcard with a photo. The card showed Elvina on a beach, probably in Hawaii. She was smiling and holding the hand of that little Asian girl he had seen at Welwyn. She pointed at the men surfing. Elvena's breasts were even larger than he remembered, but her clearly pregnant belly was even larger. Elvena. Elva, don't get too close to the water, honey, I shout to her in a tone that only a mother can say. Meme, she grumbles. How will I ever surf if I can't even stand near the water while Dad surfs? She is now 6 years old and growing like a weed. Every day she looks more like her Aunt Grace, and I love her as much as I love her almost 2-year-old brother Calvin. Over the past 2.5 years that I have been in Hawaii, Elva and I have gone through several phases. I went from her nanny to her stepmom, and then finally she just told me that stepmom was too long a word, so she just shortened it to mom. Danny is Danny again, and Calvin or Cal is our son. I once thought that the sunrise I watched here in Hawaii was not so impressive when I watched it alone. But I never get tired of watching them with my whole family. And yes, I'm almost 41 years old, and I'm a mother, and my breasts are even bigger. They receive a lot of attention, but only one person can handle them. Losing Danny almost killed me, and I'll never take that risk again. By all rights, he probably shouldn't have taken me back. I was damn wrong. But I did this stupid thing only because I love him very much. Regardless, I probably didn't deserve a second chance at happiness. But none of us were happy individually, and we are delighted together. I think on some level he knows how obsessed I am with him and keeps him in love with me. Grace and I are very close friends, and I have adopted her habit of making sure that Danny only has ugly and old secretaries. Okay, Sumi, I have no confidence in myself when it comes to my husband, but I will never let him go again. It took us a long time to get back to this point, but the heartache is finally over. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think, click to the next one. 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 Click to the next one.